Welcome back to The Breaking Bit, everybody. I am your host, Walker America. Good to see you all again. We are here for another one of our weekly segments where we do a 3-hour marathon session of all things Bitcoin and Bitcoin adjacent. We've got an interesting show for you here today. As you can see, I am not in my usual location. I am broadcasting to you from an undisclosed location in Eastern Europe, gearing up to go to the Lugano Plan B Forum here in, just next week. Which should be a good time. I hope to see some of you there. For today's show, we're going to be talking to a couple of folks representing Bitcoin Treasury companies. Bitcoin Treasury companies have obviously been the hot topic, whether it be people cheering on their rise or cheering on their fall. And I think that it's a good time to talk to some people who are running different sorts of Bitcoin Treasury companies. We're going to be hearing first from Freddie New, who's with BHodl in the UK. Also, I do say hodl. I'm not sure if Freddie says hodl or hodl. We'll just have to see. And then Adam O'Brien later in our show, who is with the Bitcoin Well, who is a Bitcoin company, who also now happens to have a treasury as well. So excited to show you guys what we have for you here today. Excited to talk through some of the things happening. We've also got some very intriguing news that has come to pass just in just today as we were preparing for this show. I'm now in a time zone that I'm not quite used to, but I'm going to do my best. We're going to have a good time. I'm going to bring up Freddie to the stage right now. Freddie New, perhaps the man with the best voice in Bitcoin, and this is coming from somebody who has been accused of that myself. It's good to see you, Freddie. How you doing?
It's good to see you too, and I've got to say I absolutely love your voice, and lovely to be back on the show with you. Thank you for having me.
The feeling is mutual. I wish my voice was quite as posh as yours is. Unfortunately, it's not. I just have my my American accent. From throwing off you colonialist bastards. But we do what we can here. We play the hands that we're dealt. But Freddie, I'm excited to have you back. So you've been on my regular show, the Bitcoin Podcast. This is now a new show that we're doing with Roxham. And this show is even longer form than a traditional podcast. We try to keep it more dynamic. And basically the goal has been to bring together people who have, similar vibes for each show in terms of what they're doing for the Bitcoin community. And I think that what you guys are doing with BHodl is really interesting. Now, to clarify, I am not in any way an early investor in BHodl. I've not even looked into how I would be able to get it as an American citizen. I have no financial interest in this whatsoever. I just like you, Freddie. I like what you're doing, and I like your attitude about things. And I think it's a good time to talk about Bitcoin Treasury companies from a different perspective than what we've been seeing in a lot of the, North American Bitcoin Treasury companies. And so maybe if you could just start out, just give people an intro to who you are and how you ended up at BHodl launching this British or United Kingdom-ish, I'm not sure which one you identify as there either, this Bitcoin Treasury company. Can you give us a little bit of the rundown there?
Of course. So probably I call it British rather than United Kingdom. And how I ended up here. Well, or the old enemy. We don't mind. We won't take offense. We're all friends now. So how did I end up here? So some people may know me from my work in policy on the Bitcoin Policy UK side. So I've been active in the Bitcoin space for a long while now, mainly trying to educate politicians and regulators in the UK about Bitcoin, what it is, and if they want to regulate it at all, how they might go about doing that properly. And then I was looking to transition out of my fiat job into Bitcoin. I had a number of good conversations with the team at Coin Corner, who are a well-respected and very well-known UK Bitcoin exchange, so GB exchange. And I was all lined up to join them as their chief strategy officer. And then they presented to me this opportunity to head up BHodl or BHodl, depending on whether I'm easy if you want to go for a long U or a short U. It's all the same to me. And thinking maybe about Bitcoin treasury companies with a bit more of a macro lens, initially back in 2020 or whenever it was, when Saylor first began buying, when the phenomenon really appeared, I was initially a little skeptical, I have to say, for two reasons. Firstly, I didn't want Saylor to buy up all the Bitcoin and to leave none for the rest of us, which he still seems to be doing. And secondly, I was very focused on Bitcoin as a means of exchange. So one of the reasons I've always loved Bitcoin is not Bitcoin in and of itself, but its uncensorable nature and its ability to ensure that human beings can continue to transact freely peer-to-peer, even if their governments don't want them to do that. And to my mind, accumulation of Bitcoin within corporate entities might perhaps undermine that. So the key differentiating factor for me in BHODL was that the team, when I was in the initial discussions, had got some very interesting ideas around using the Bitcoin that we buy to grow and build out the Lightning Network. And that was really what got me over the line in terms of suddenly being enthusiastic about the company and about the team. We've got a bunch of people who are very, very good at what they do, been in Bitcoin for a long time, probably two of the best Lightning engineers in the world on the team, and also people with very deep paytech experience. So the chair of our board, for example, we brought in from PayPal. And so for me, it's really a double whammy. And again, forgive me if I'm rambling here.
Not at all.
No, we love a ramble. So an interesting one way of thinking about treasury companies is from the store of value perspective. And I think the other is from the medium of exchange perspective, which is what we're developing. But starting with the store of value perspective, if you go all the way back to the foundation of the Bank of England in 1694, that was initially a private company which was set up to accumulate gold and then to issue claims on that private bank backed by the gold in its vaults. And at a very simple level, that's fundamentally what your classic Bitcoin treasury company will do. It will, except slightly in reverse, it will issue equity or different forms of instruments in order to provide fiat currency for it to acquire what's called the unquestionable asset. In 1694, the unquestionable asset was gold. Today, most people running Bitcoin treasury companies would see the unquestionable asset as Bitcoin. Because as we can see from all of the news about the debasement trade in the press recently, there's an increasing understanding, I think, that the claims on the United States government in the form of treasuries, on the United Kingdom government in the form of gilts, people are beginning to lose faith in those paper promises. And I personally think we may be on the verge of seeing a world where there's I suppose a turning away from our traditional forms of risk-free assets, which were treasuries or gilts, and back towards perhaps paper issued by holders of the unquestionable assets, namely holders of Bitcoin. So that's the store of value thesis, I think, for most treasury companies. But then for me, the medium of exchange is almost in some ways more important. And if Bitcoin is only held by large institutions, which can be captured by states, I think you and I have a similar view of states. I think it was you actually who first taught me there is no red, there is no blue, there is the state and there is you.
Everyone loves a good rhyme, right?
Yeah.
To simplify things down. No, it's true. And just to interrupt you, if I may there, what I think is interesting about what you guys are doing, and actually like everything you've just said there, is that it seems to run counter to the narrative that we're seeing in a lot of the Bitcoin treasury companies, at least in the US. Those are the ones I'm most familiar with. I think those are the ones that most people are most familiar with at this point. Obviously, there are ones popping up in various jurisdictions around the world now, but it's running a bit counter to that narrative. This idea that Bitcoin as a medium of exchange really is sort of, it matters. It really, really matters. It's not enough for it to just be the pristine capital. As to kind of paraphrase Michael Saylor, it's more in line with things that Jack Dorsey has said, which again, to paraphrase, but if Bitcoin is not widely used as a medium of exchange, it's basically failed. Is that sort of your outlook on it as well? Obviously, the store of value part matters tremendously. No one is denying that, because you need to have that store of value side before you can get to something being kind of widely used as the medium of exchange as well. But is your outlook that really Bitcoin is just if it doesn't get the medium of exchange adoption at a meaningful level, it really has sort of just failed in its original intent?
I actually agree with them. Certainly my personal view, and one that I've always espoused in public, is that Bitcoin needs to be both of those things. And certainly in terms both of our communications to investors and also more widely, we see Bitcoin as still on the road to full monetization. Its store of value thesis, I think, has been decently proven over the last 10 years or so. We are in the process of moving into a medium of exchange. And as you and I know, it's already used, particularly in extreme scenarios, and maybe we can dig into some of those a bit more. But increasingly, even in countries like the United States and the UK, as a means of exchange, and it has many obvious advantages, again, that you and I both know about, if you are using it as a medium of exchange. And I'm more on the Dorsey camp here. I think it both is, and what Saylor says is true. It is pristine capital. It's the unquestionable asset. Something I refer to again and again when thinking about Bitcoin is that the majority of our money that we're familiar with prior to Bitcoin is a form of liability. Like I was saying earlier, those early banknotes that were issued, they were claims on the Bank of England, which was a private institution at the time. They meant that you could turn up at the Bank of England, present your certificate, and you get some gold in exchange. So that they were claims on a hard asset that was held by the bank. And I tweeted earlier today, referring back to a famous post from Hal Finney back in 2010. He saw a world where Bitcoin banks existed, and they would issue a form of e-cash, for example, in his thesis, that would be redeemable for actual Bitcoin. And conceptually, I've got no problem with that kind of world. But at the same time, and I think that the analogy of the world as it is today is a useful one. You and I probably both have bank accounts where we have claims on banks, but at the same time, we are still free to use cash. And there's a direct equivalence between the cash that we exchange peer-to-peer and the cash that we may deposit into banks. And at the moment of deposit, it becomes a claim on that bank. So what you have when you've deposited your $10 or your £10 into the bank is not that $10 anymore. It's a claim for $10 against the bank. And the problem with the fiat banking system is that those claims can be endlessly rehypothecated or recreated, and they don't relate to an actual asset that is tangible or intangible, but fixed in supply, unlike gold or unlike Bitcoin. But at the same time, the medium of exchange narrative for me is absolutely crucial, and I completely agree with Jack on that front. It's in the first line of the white paper, and it's absolutely fundamental to the thesis of what Bitcoin is. If you can't pay with it, particularly when your government doesn't want you to, and I'm sure I'm on some kind of a list somewhere already, so I think every day. Yes, I'm sure you're on a list as well, actually.
Maybe a couple of them.
Cheers. I'm actually having a Venezuelan rum here. A shout out to my brothers in debasement.
Fantastic. Yeah, nothing like celebrating the absolute destruction of people's purchasing power with a little bit of their rum, right? That's what I always say.
Well, cheers, my friend. Yeah, so I think, but both of those things can be true at the same time. And for me, because they are effectively dots on the same graph, they're stops on the same journey. We need to move from store of value to medium of exchange. Personally, I think it's unlikely that I'll see unit of accounts in my lifetime. In fact, I hope I don't, because if I do, it means that society's probably collapsed.
Well, so that's interesting, actually, because that old quote, "The future is here, it's just not evenly distributed yet." I think about that a lot as it relates to Bitcoin, because depending on where you are in the world, depending on you as an individual, you may be living in the future relative to other Bitcoiners. If you are living in a country with incredibly strict capital controls, an authoritarian regime, you're already using Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. Whereas, let's say, US or Western, so-called developed world Bitcoiners may be only using it as a store of value. Furthermore, if you're running a business on Bitcoin, one could make the argument that you are, at least personally or in for your business, using it already as a unit of account. So, I mean, do you think, like, we obviously see the store of value is here? That's undoubtedly true. Medium of exchange is, and to a lesser extent, unit of account, I would say, are here, but just it's much more of a smattering of them, right? It's not evenly distributed yet. Fair to say.
I think that's a really good point, actually. Maybe I should backtrack on what I just said. Unit of accounts not here in the UK, probably not here yet in the US. Although, again, companies like ours, we are looking into some innovative uses of Bitcoin, which would potentially denominate certain things. And I can't, forgive me, I can't, because we're public now, I can't go into any more detail on this until these are definitive and can be announced to the market. So I think actually you're right, and there are certain small circular economies that we're seeing in the UK Leadenhall market. If you ever visit, and Tooting. Tooting market is another one. There've been some Bitcoin magazine articles around that, where you can pay things for Bitcoin and things are denominated in Bitcoin. So, and I think you're very, very correct in terms of looking at other jurisdictions, particularly those with collapsing currencies. So over here, our inflation rate, I think, is about 3.8% at the moment. If it was 38%, people in the UK would be much more likely to be perhaps denominating things in Bitcoin rather than in the pound.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. I mean, this is one of the reasons why you see increased adoption where currencies are failing faster. You see massive rates of adoption in Turkey, for example, where they still managed to run a pretty, shout out to the Turks, because they managed to run a pretty functional economy, relatively speaking, with insane inflation. I mean, insane official rates of inflation. And the actual inflation rate is obviously far worse than that. I'm constantly amazed by by human ingenuity to be able to operate businesses, live lives in the midst of just a real-time currency collapse. And this happens, this is a tale as old as time, right? This is nothing new. Every time you have a centralization and the ability to print the currency out of thin air, eventually, it's going to be debased to zero. Like, this is just, it's going to happen. And some happen slower than others. I'd be curious, though, to dig in a little bit to that medium of exchange angle and what it means for you guys as a Bitcoin treasury company. I understand you've got like a couple different, maybe some of them are public, some of them aren't, but the ones that are public, at least, you've talked about actually running basically, big fat lightning nodes and having a lot of liquidity flowing through them. Maybe we can dig into that a little bit, and then I'd love to also get kind of your thoughts from a broader perspective after that, just about how you see the state of Lightning, if this is something where what you guys are doing, what some of these other larger companies are doing, just basically providing a ton of liquidity and opening up large channels between each other, kind of this hub and spoke model, is going to be what we see. And if self-custodial Lightning is sort of like, it's just not going to really happen. But maybe we could start with, can you talk through a little bit what you guys are doing in terms of incorporating running a Lightning node into your actual Bitcoin treasury strategy, which is something perhaps you're the first, perhaps not. Please do correct me in either direction there.
I think we're the second. So okay. Liquid in Canada are also doing this.
Okay.
They announced some results just last week, actually. They are, forgive me, you're going to need to fact check me on this, but I think they are getting in the around about 8% in terms of on value locked up. Please double check that. I don't have the data in front of me. So yes, exactly. The theory is that we would be able to position our nodes at opportune junctures in the network so as to maximize the amount of transactions that run through them, and therefore the amount of revenue that we're able to generate therefrom. We are starting life with a node that we are acquiring on a long-term lease from Coin Corner. That's a 40-year lease, so the node is effectively ours for the foreseeable future. It's very highly ranked. It's in the top 100 out of the 14,000 Lightning nodes on the planet. At the moment, it's not been optimized for routing, but the team have, since we listed, the team been working hard on optimizing that and gathering data from the amount of transaction flow that we're getting through it and the amount of revenue we're generating from it. So from a commercial and selfish perspective, because we're running a company, we're obviously in this game to maximize value for our shareholders. That's the raison d'etre for a company. And it's important to us that we generate as much revenue from our Lightning activities as possible for all of the reasons that you want a company to generate revenue in the first place. Companies which have low levels of leverage and high levels of revenue are far less likely to go bust. A key thing for us is it's important never to become a forced seller of the Bitcoin that we have acquired, and having a profitable operating business underneath the Bitcoin acquisition model is fundamental to our ongoing operations as a going concern in the future. Side note: a lot of my legal work in the past related to restructuring and insolvency work. Despite my my beautiful face and my youthful appearance, I'm old enough to have worked through the financial crisis. I remember how horrendous that was and how many businesses, including very large banks, were destroyed. So I have a very keen understanding and PTSD basically about what kills companies and how important it is to avoid that. So if we can create a model where we issue equity or other instruments, we acquire the store of value, and then we turn that into a medium of exchange, and at the same time earn revenue from those medium of exchange operations, we're cooking with gas at that point.
So I think that's quite interesting, because again, just to really kind of beat this horse that may already be dead here, but what you hear from these other companies is just more, we're going to basically acquire as much Bitcoin as we can through more, let's say, traditional methods. Like most of these companies, and obviously plenty of, you named one with Liquid in Canada, plenty of exceptions to the rule. But the general rule seems to be, let's make this more of a, quote, pure play Bitcoin treasury company. We're not going to actually focus at all on having a Bitcoin business, a revenue generating business that involves Bitcoin, that is somehow related to Bitcoin as a part of our company. Maybe they still have a cash flow positive business, MicroStrategy. Of course, they've pivoted some of their operations into more Bitcoin focused things, but they do still have their core business intelligence business there. These other ones do as well, that are kind of hopping on this Bitcoin treasury train. How do you see this? I mean, do you think that sort of strategy of, look, we're not, we're just trying to acquire Bitcoin and hold Bitcoin, we're not so much worried with building in the Bitcoin ecosystem as much. Do you think that that's actually sustainable in the long term? And I guess more specifically, sustainable through bear markets?
It's an interesting question. First thing to say is that we do actually have the same aim to acquire as much Bitcoin as possible.
Sure.
For a fairly obvious reason, there's only 21 million of them. And with Saylor buying up half the supply, we're in a bit of a fight there. The second thing to say is that I think all companies will probably need some form of revenue generating business, and whether that happens to be in Bitcoin or not, no value judgment. I'm agnostic to that. If Metaplanners are making enough money from their hotel to run their business operations, and then they have the treasury play as well, that's quite interesting value prop. Smarter Web in the UK, their core business focuses on web design and web development, and I understand that's profitable as well. So to the extent that business can, keep the lights on, then you can operate your treasury play on the side as well. It makes valuation a little bit difficult because you're almost looking at a hybrid valuation model there. I don't want to go too deep into valuation metrics, but traditionally, certainly from my private equity days, when you were looking at a company, the most common valuation metric we used was an EBITDA multiple. So EBITDA, for any of your listeners who's not familiar with it, is short for earnings before interest, deductions, taxation, amortization, and so on. So it's basically how much you're earning before you need to pay debt on your interest, service your debt, basically, pay your expenses, pay your taxes, and so on. And sometimes, I remember EBITDA multiples getting completely nuts, like 12 or 13 times, which is crazy in the boom times. If you're looking at an asset management business, you might do what's called an AUM multiple, which is assets under management. And that, I think, is kind of more akin to the MNAV valuation that we see in Bitcoin treasury companies. MNAV essentially being it's a ratio between your market capitalization and the amount of Bitcoin that you have under management, and the current market value of that Bitcoin. The interesting thing with Bitcoin is that as we know from the repeated criticisms of it from our friends in the, the mainstream media, it's not a productive asset. So it's very hard to generate yield on Bitcoin or revenues. And that was trying to answer that question was one of the reasons that BHODL was set up, looking at different ways of actually making yield or revenue in a safe way, not like Celsius, not like BlockFi, not like FTX, but in a custodial way, and importantly, in a safe custodial way that directly contributed to the ongoing success of Bitcoin as a payments network. So everyone in the team is really focused on that, and that for me is a kicker with us.
What do you think about the MNAV generally as this kind of, it seems to have become really just like the go-to metric for people to look at? We've also obviously seen recently a bit of a, let's say, a rout in many of the Bitcoin treasury companies. At the same time as you've seen a lot of, let's say, Bitcoin miners, for example, really seeming to go on like gangbusters. I think maybe that's a British expression. I'm not sure. I might be pulling that out of somewhere. But we've seen a lot of these MNAVs seemingly trend towards one, and a lot of analysts saying, well, of course they're trending towards one. Like it makes sense. I mean, what's your read on this? One, is this the best metric to judge these companies by? And two, I mean, I would love just kind of your thoughts overall on what we've seen in the market kind of recently.
So I think it's a really interesting lens to look at. And I think part of it depends on how far through that lens you're willing to look. So if you, tracking back to what we were mentioning about the Bank of England earlier, if you're looking through a very, very long lens, then acquiring an asset that has a compound annual growth rate comparable to Bitcoin's, and then issuing claims against that asset once you've acquired it, claims being the claims against your company, in other words, the modern equivalent of banknotes, whether those be convertible loan notes or other exotic instruments or even equity, then that's an interesting long-term model. However, the data is showing us that, as you say, MNAVs are compressing, and in that context and in that analysis, I think an MNAV above one denotes that the market is perceiving some value to your company over and above the value of the assets which you hold. And that value could be derived from a number of different areas. And one of those could be the cash flow that is thrown off from your underlying operating business. And I think that the logical reason for that is because not many people are yet in the Bank of England claims against the unquestionable asset bucket that we talked about. There may be a few outliers who understand the really long-term play here, that we're talking with a lens of decades and potentially multiple decades, a world in which fiat currencies have collapsed and the holders of Bitcoin are those holding the most valuable asset on the planet. That takes quite a leap of faith and understanding. And I think particularly from the traditional financial press, actually, you mentioned that MNAV is almost become a sort of religious go-to metric among those who analyze treasury companies. I think that's a fair point. It's also become a complete whipping boy and a figure of fun for the traditional finance press. If you read any Financial Times article on MNAV, they can barely type the articles because they're laughing so hard.
Yeah. Well, so okay, that's an interesting point. I mean, I'm curious just broadly. Obviously, you guys are very confident in this play in terms of Bitcoin treasury companies. Where you see them going. I believe that this was also a natural evolution of Bitcoin. This is a symptom of Bitcoin being successful. Like if Bitcoin was winning, you would see companies, corporations, and nation states rush to accumulate as much Bitcoin as they possibly could, as individuals have been doing and are still doing and will still continue to do. This is I think, a natural part of this progression. I also think, we saw a lot of these companies. I think how do I say this? There's again, very different types from an operational perspective of these Bitcoin treasury companies. There's also very different types from a values-based perspective of these treasury companies. There are treasury companies that are very clearly, founded and operated by hardcore Bitcoiners, and those that are perhaps less so, to be charitable. Do you think that these companies, I mean, do we start to see a consolidation of these? I know we're still at the very early stages of this, the very early stages, but do we start to see a little bit of a consolidation of these companies because some of them just may not survive the bear market, but then we will have other larger players, perhaps it's Sailor, perhaps it's you guys, I don't know who it is, that ends up kind of trying to come in and basically snap up the competition as they sort of, if they run into some dire straits, and be able to acquire the Bitcoin that that company holds at a discount. Is that something you guys are looking at long term? Is that something you guys are thinking about, or just you personally have any thoughts on?
Maybe the last question first.
Sure. I forget, yes. Publicly traded company. You can't. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I mean, tracking back to my Greek joke earlier, that's actually a rhetorical technique called hysteron proton, which Homer used to use, and it means last first. Anyway, I really need to get out of the house more, don't I?
I'm always learning something new from you about the classics, Freddie. I love it.
Okay. So in terms of distressed M&A activity, this used to be my bread and butter, and it comes back to a point we were discussing earlier, which is what's your cash flow look like. So there are broadly speaking two types of company insolvency. One is balance sheet insolvency, which is when the amount of your debts exceeds the amount of your assets. And the other is cash flow insolvency, which is when you can't pay your debts as they fall due. You can survive being balance sheet insolvent for a really long time, provided that you've got cash coming in the door. And this is simply the equivalent to you having an enormous credit card debt, but always making enough each month to pay that off. So you're not going to go bankrupt as an individual if you can continue servicing your personal debts, and companies are broadly the same. What absolutely kills companies is cash flow insolvency. And that's why for B Hodl, it's absolutely critical for us to do two things. Firstly, with our initial raise, we set aside we set aside 4 years worth of runway to know that we had enough cash in the bank to sustain all of our business operations while we develop this Lightning Network proof of concept. So there's no danger of us going bust for 4 years. And that gives us a long run. And I've worked in startups for 6 years now. Sometimes we'd only have 2 months worth of runway, and that's why I've got more gray hairs than I should have. Despite my extensive beauty regime.
Well, I like that you picked 4 years. I'm sure was you were trying to basically be able to ride out a cycle, correct?
Exactly.
And I'm assuming that was the thought process.
100%, yeah. And so everyone who's joined B Hodl from the Coin Corner team has done 3 bear market cycles. Running a Bitcoin business through 3 bears is tough. And I've been in Bitcoin since 2015. I've seen the highs and the lows. I remember the long period leading up to early 2016 when there was virtually no price movement at all. The price fluctuated between like 150 and 250. Bitcoin was basically a stable coin for about 3 years. People kind of forget that. So in terms of cash flow positivity, that's absolutely crucial to surviving as a company. And then moving into sort of distressed M&A more generally, if we were to do that ourselves, that would only be if it was in the best interest of the company for the benefit of our shareholders, which is the guiding star for running a company in almost all jurisdictions, particularly in the UK. But I think you're right. There to the extent that some treasury companies might become distressed, there's definitely opportunity for those with dry powder, with a lot of cash flow, to look to make acquisitions of those companies' shares. And the really interesting thing about a distressed acquisition is, as a lawyer, it's quite fun because you get to think up some really funky ways of acquiring what you actually want from that distressed company. I've got a tombstone here for, and this was a horrendous deal I did in 2009. A company called Spinvox. So they were an early AI voice recognition company. Supposedly, they claim to be able to translate your text messages into voicemails into text messages, and then send them to you in a text. It turned out that their tech was only like 30% effective, and a lot of their voicemails were being transcribed by minimum wage workers in appalling conditions. But so wow. It was awful. People were getting messages from these people saying, "I'm working in intolerable conditions. Please send help." So the company absolutely collapsed, and we should tell this stuff. It's a terrible, horrible story, but darkly funny.
Oh my God!
It was awful. So that company collapsed, and it was acquired by a company called Nuance. And what Nuance did was they actually bought the debt of Spinbox. They bought the shares for £1. They bought the debt for Spinbox, and then they got the IP, and then everything else was just thrown away. So just running a playbook on acquiring a distressed Bitcoin treasury company, you don't want the shares, you just want the assets underneath. So you might structure that as an asset sale agreement with an administrator who's put the company into administration and then sells the assets rather than buying the shares. So with a distressed M&A hat on, I think that's probably the way you structure it.
Okay. No, I mean, I appreciate that. And I have not worn as many hats as you do. So I like to be able to benefit from that knowledge. We do need to take a very quick break, Freddie, and then we'll be right back. I've got a few more questions for you before we have to say goodbye. Don't touch that dial, folks. We will be right back in a couple of minutes.
The future of capital markets runs on Bitcoin. Introducing Roxum, the first ever exchange where Bitcoiners can trade treasury stocks entirely in BTC. Get exposure to top Bitcoin holding companies like MicroStrategy and Metaplanet, priced in Bitcoin from the start. No fiat, no middlemen. This is what financial freedom looks like. Early access now live at roxum.com/treasuries. Built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners.
So, tell us about your furry friend here. What's his name?
Oh, this? This is Bitcoin.
Bitcoin?
It's not just a cat, he's family.
Quite a name, and I must say, looks quite pampered.
Oh, absolutely. Bitcoin deserves nothing but the best. He's my little prince.
But with such a valuable pet, aren't you afraid of losing him?
Losing Bitcoin? No, it never happened before, so it's not something I worry about. Excuse me for a moment. Bitcoin, stay here, right?
Bitcoin, no! Bitcoin, come on, little buddy, Bitcoin, I need you, don't go!
In a world far away. Nah, just kidding. This story begins in this world. It all started in 1460 in Antwerp, when the first commodities exchange was created, but the real transformation came in 1602, when the Amsterdam Stock Exchange was founded. Considered the oldest in the world, it was the first to trade financial assets. Over the years, Britain expanded its colonial and maritime influence, and the British pound sterling overtook the Dutch guilder in the market. Thus, the London Stock Exchange became the financial centre of the world. The 20th century came, and the world got into some trouble. But shortly after World War II, the Bretton Woods Agreement established the dollar as the world's primary reserve currency, and the centre of the planet moved to Wall Street. Today, we're travelling at the speed of light towards a new age, an era shaped by the consolidation of Bitcoin as the currency that will define the future of the markets. We present Roxum, a new Bitcoin-denominated market that allows trading all sorts of securities, commodities, derivatives, options, and anything you can imagine. Roxum, rock-solid markets.
Security matters. Zappo Bank, the only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
The future of
All right, we are back. Thank you for your patience. I'm here with Freddie New, just in case you joined during the break, representing B Hodl or Hodl, a Bitcoin treasury company out of the United Kingdom that is taking a slightly different approach to Bitcoin treasury companies in that they are actually doing things that involve Bitcoin besides just purchasing it, which of course is still using Bitcoin, as anyone who doesn't actually spend their Bitcoin will tell you ad nauseum. Personally, I do like to spend my Bitcoin though. I like to zap my Bitcoin on Nostr and receive zaps on Nostr for sats, which is always lovely. And we happen to be live on Nostr right now as well. And somebody just zapped me sats, which is always an amazing thing. You really if you don't use Bitcoin on a regular basis, I think it's easy to forget how magical it is. Like, sure, watching the number go up is fantastic, but actually using it feels a bit different. And one of the things I want to talk about, Freddie, because we've got you for here for just a couple more minutes, and I'd like to get your broader perspective on something, because obviously Bitcoin treasury companies have been the talk of the digital town square. That being said, we just saw a pretty violent sell-off in Bitcoin, and also in everything, right? Like everything sold off on whatever new Trump tariff tweet du jour happened to set off markets, or whatever big whales happen to be liquidating, whatever it might be. I think it's important to remind people that if you just hold Bitcoin in self-custody, you are unaffected by these things. And I'm curious, like, for you, because you are a hardcore Bitcoiner, how are you kind of balancing these two worlds? One of which, if I had to guess, I'd say if you still are to give any advice to friends and family, it's, listen, get some Bitcoin in self-custody, control your own keys, right? Hold your own keys so you actually hold the Bitcoin. But balancing that with, okay, you're trying to create shareholder value, you're trying to build up a company. I think that the other extreme of that, which is like, we should never invest in anything ever that isn't Bitcoin, is just obviously absurd on its face. Like, people are going to start businesses, people are going to invest in businesses, people want to invest in businesses. How do you balance the two at this place that we're at right now in Bitcoin's sort of short but quite fascinating history?
There's quite a lot to unpack there.
I always ask big of questions.
I was trying to scribble down a few thoughts while you were speaking. So on your use cases and Nostr, I think that's absolutely fantastic. My proudest zaps were, I've had 2 zaps from Jack Dorsey over the years. I mean, and I'm terribly sorry that the Bitcoin is fungible, because otherwise I would have segregated those sats and made them rare sats or something. Once was when Nostr was just getting going. I dropped in. Do you remember those days you would drop an invoice in rather than a zap? Mm-hmm. Before zap functionality existed. I pinged him and said, "Hey Jack, is this working?" And he just zapped me back 10 sats and said, "Yes, it is," which was amazing. Fantastic. And then I met him in Nairobi last year. We had a chat about CBDCs, about the importance of the freedom to transact. I shared a photo of us together, and then he zapped me 5,000 sats that time. So those are very proud zaps, and I pass them on. The lovely thing about Nostr is zaps come into your wallet, and they go on to you. They go on elsewhere. Question about investing in anything but Bitcoin. I think it's really important to remember what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is money, and you don't invest in money. You may save value in money. You may save your time and your energy and your work in money, but then you go off and you exchange money for things that you want. The truism, money is one half of every transaction. And if we believe, as I see it correctly, that Bitcoin is a perfected form of new money, then we should just treat it like that. And paying for things in it is one of those functionalities that a money is supposed to have. Femi Longe's got a really nice aspect of this, and I think he turns it on its head. So when people say you should never invest in anything but Bitcoin, Femi repeatedly argues that don't just hodl your Bitcoin. And he comes at this with the perspective of many different African nations who are crying out for investment and for funding. And some of the developers in Africa, and maybe it's worth spending a sec on this, are doing incredible stuff in markets that I in the UK and maybe you in the US wouldn't necessarily create those kind of products, because we don't. I've got 2 examples in my mind. I'll come in a second if I don't lose my train of thought. Femi's point is that you shouldn't just hold your Bitcoin. You should deploy it, and you should use it as money to invest. Maybe use it to invest in other companies where people are trying to build things. And I return a lot to the idea that creating fiat money is easy, but creating value is hard. And that for me is really the fundamental point that Bitcoin solves. Bitcoin is kind of unified the creation of value and the creation of money as both being hard, which they should be. You and I work extremely hard, and hopefully as a result we create value. If we were a central bank, we could just sit back and change numbers on a screen and we'd both be rich.
Must be nice, man.
Yeah, it'd be fantastic. Did you know that the governor of the Bank of England went to the same college as I did at Cambridge? He's just 10 years older than I am.
Wow.
How weird is that?
You English folks are fascinating. I've got to say, like that's just a casual thing you can drop into conversation. Okay, I don't want you to lose your train of thought, so continue about some of the awesome work in Africa, perhaps. But otherwise, I'll get sidetracked talking about how strange England is to me.
Honestly, we should have another session sometimes talking about how strange England is. I would love for you to come over sometime. Bring Carla. We can really explore quite how strange it is. There's lots of weirdness.
I'm due a visit. I think it'll be for Peter McCormack's cheat code this year. We're finally going to make it to it, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. I'll really try and make that. So maybe just finishing that train of thought. 2 fantastic products, and I've met and know the founders of each of these. One is called Machankura, and the other is called Tando. So you're familiar with both of these, but I think for your listeners, so Machankura addresses a really fantastic solution to a problem that you and I probably don't have. In that, I assume we both have smartphones with wallets on them. Machankura answers the question, what the hell do I do if I have no Wi-Fi, no 5G, and I've just got a dumb phone? How can I possibly use Bitcoin? And Machankura enables you to send Lightning over SMS. And that is the kind of product that is really needed in many, many sub-Saharan African countries in particular, but which developers in the UK and the US probably would never have worked on because that problem doesn't really exist to the same extent. Incredible solution to a local problem. And I think, if you were to invest Bitcoin in that kind of a company, why is that a bad use of your money? Sounds amazing. And Tando is another fantastic example. So you probably know already about M-Pesa, which is the sort of Kenyan and sort of East African means of electronic payments. Tando is a fantastic app that lets you pay in Bitcoin using a merchant's M-Pesa number. So the merchant can receive Kenyan shillings in their bank account, which you have sent to them using Tando links to your wallet, Satoshi, your Blue Wallet, your Moon Wallet, whatever. It's an incredibly seamless UX, utterly brilliant design. And again, not something I think a developer in the UK or the US would necessarily have worked on. So my point, which I have rambled towards slowly, is that if you're wanting to invest in the creation of value, the human beings exploring new exciting ideas and building new products and new companies, which is what we're all about eventually, then that's a perfectly fine use of your money. Also, I'm a freedom maximalist, and you do whatever the hell you want with your money, and there's none of my business to tell you what to do with it.
I say amen to that. Although I do find that oftentimes people who are all about freedom of choice and as it relates to Bitcoin, I'm not accusing you of this. I'm speaking more broadly. Really love telling other people what to do with their money. Very strangely, I think we should do whatever we want. I may not agree with some of those things, and that's perfectly fine. Like I don't. Nobody agrees with any one person, any one other person besides themselves on everything. Like it's just not possible. I don't agree with my own wife on everything, and if I don't agree with her on everything, I'm sure as hell not going to agree with every Tom, Dick, and Harry out there, right? It's just not going to happen. And if she's listening to this right now, which she's not because she doesn't watch my podcast, luckily, she would probably have some words for me because, of course, I agree with her. But no, beside the point, Freddie, I do want to be conscious of your time. I think you've got 5 minutes left, correct?
Yes, that's great.
Okay.
I do have a hard stop at 7.
No, it's okay. No, it's no problem at all. I'm going to get to rant a bit after this, which is fantastic.
Love it.
I'll get into my ranting flow state. But while I'm still in interviewee state, I'm curious if there's anything, let's say, outside of okay, you've mentioned a couple of really, I think, important projects right now with Tando and Machankura. You're aware of these things. You've obviously most people, I think, at this point probably, and this will probably there'll be a turn, flipping point for this, but most people may know you through your work with the Bitcoin policy in the UK. There's a lot of very interesting things happening in the UK right now. The Online Safety Act. We've got a lot of things. I know the UK is not part of Europe anymore, but I'll just say broadly across the pond, there's some strange things happening. Not to say there aren't strange things happening here in the US, but how worried are you right now, I guess, more broadly about the rise of CBDCs the world at large. I think in the US, we have pretty strong opposition to this right now, even from our politicians. In other parts of the world, and I'll speak about the so-called developed Western world right now, there seems to be almost tacit endorsement, if not outright support of some insane policies as they relate to the command and control of people's money through central bank digital currencies. How big of a risk do you think this is right now? And is this something that you're tracking pretty closely still?
It is. So this is a piece of work that we have been engaged in for a number of years with Bitcoin Policy UK, right from the start, actually. One of the first pieces we ever wrote was a strong rebuttal and opposition to the then plans for the UK CBDC. I would say, actually, that I'm less worried than I was 2 years ago in the United Kingdom for a number of reasons. Firstly, there's also very strong political opposition to them here, too, both in the House of Lords and in the House of Commons. Secondly, it's not a manifesto pledge of the new government. And that's important because in the UK, we have something called the Salisbury Convention, which is effectively provides that the House of Lords won't oppose a policy that was in a new government's manifesto. Because CBDCs weren't in the Labour government's manifesto, that gives the Lords carte blanche to oppose them as hard as they like. Interestingly, one of the people in the House of Lords who opposes them most strongly is Mervyn King, whom you may remember was a former governor of the Bank of England. So we actually have some quite heavy firepower on our side. There are other groups like the Together Foundation and Big Brother Watch who are strongly opposed to CBDCs. We've collaborated with them in the past on various events pushing back against them. On the positive note, the more the public learn about CBDCs, the less they like them. The Reform Party, who are currently leading in the polls, are also very, very much opposed to CBDCs. And I'd say that institutions like the Digital Pound Foundation, who were set up and funded, I believe, and this is opinion, not fact, because I haven't looked into it, I believe by Ripple, they have been subsumed within another organization and no longer seem to be pushing as hard as they were for the CBDC in the UK. And maybe the final point to make there is that the current governor of the Bank of England himself still states that he doesn't see there's much of a point to the CBDC at all. So I think what we're dealing with is a bit of a tension between our increasingly authoritarian government, who would quite like to have a CBDC, and the vast majority of politicians, public, and actually the institutions who would need to support them in order to make them work, actually opposing them. So, maybe that's a positive note to finish on. I'm going to stick my neck out and say I'm fairly confident we're going to be able to prevent them from being formed in the United Kingdom.
Well, honestly, that is great to hear, because I do worry about our former colonial masters over there. I know there's a lot of great Bitcoiners over there. Yourself, Peter Batman McCormack, doing great work to try and to liberate you from yourselves. I just want to make sure that we Americans don't have to come over there and get you guys out of a pickle. So I'm glad to hear that it looks like for now you'll be okay. We don't have to, colonialize you guys in exchange and then free you later. So I'm glad to hear that. Freddie, I do want to get you out of here on time. Thank you so much for your time. Please, I encourage people to follow you as well. You're always a wealth of knowledge, whether that be about the classics or about all things Bitcoin. Thank you for all the work that you do, and thank you for sharing your time.
Thank you so much, Walker. Lovely to see you again, mate. All the best.
Cheers, Freddie.
Take care.
The future of capital markets runs on Bitcoin. Introducing Roxum, the first ever exchange where Bitcoiners can trade Treasury stocks entirely in BTC. Get exposure to top Bitcoin holding companies like MicroStrategy and Metaplanet, priced in Bitcoin from the start. No fiat, no middlemen. This is what financial freedom looks like. Early access now live at roxum.com/treasuries. Built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners.
So, tell us about your furry friend here. What's his name?
Oh, this? This is Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
It's not just a cat, he's family.
Quite a name, and I must say, looks quite pampered.
Oh, absolutely. Bitcoin deserves nothing but the best. He's my little prince.
But with such a valuable pet, aren't you afraid of losing him?
Losing Bitcoin? No, it never happened before, so it's not something I worry about. Excuse me for a moment. Bitcoin, stay here, right?
Bitcoin, no! Bitcoin, come on, little buddy, Bitcoin, I need you. Don't go.
In a world far away. Nah, just kidding. This story begins in this world. It all started in 1460 in Antwerp, when the first commodities exchange was created, but the real transformation came in 1602, when the Amsterdam Stock Exchange was founded. Considered the oldest in the world, it was the first to trade financial assets. Over the years, Britain expanded its colonial and maritime influence, and the British pound sterling overtook the Dutch guilder in the market. Thus, the London Stock Exchange became the financial centre of the world. The 20th century came, and the world got into some trouble. But shortly after World War II, the Bretton Woods Agreement established the dollar as the world's primary reserve currency, and the centre of the planet moved to Wall Street. Today, we're travelling at the speed of light towards a new age, an era shaped by the consolidation of Bitcoin as the currency that will define the future of the markets. We present Roxum, a new Bitcoin-denominated market that allows trading all sorts of securities, commodities, derivatives, options, and anything you can imagine. Roxum, rock-solid markets.
Security matters. Zappo Bank. The only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
The future of
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you, Freddie, for joining us previously there on our last segment of the Breaking Bit. We have now actually what turned out to be an impromptu and perfect next guest here, Decentra Suze, aka Susie. I'm going to bring you up on stage here. Thank you so much for joining. Pleasure to have you here. It's almost like you planned it to be after Freddie.
No, I didn't. No, do you know what? It's just that it popped up, and because it actually came up as a notification, I just happened to be sitting at my desk, and I thought, oh, and I was actually watching you at the same time because obviously I'm really interested in everything that Freddie has to say, everything. So yeah,
As
I was
am
just actually, to be fair, I only caught the kind of tail end of it where you were talking about CBDCs and the MNAV, which I think is a really important conversation to have.
That it is, and I'm glad that you've joined. Obviously, you are now also. Well, I think you may have been on before me as part of the this Roxum crew of regulars here. But I'm excited to have you on here. I think you are, and just for folks that don't know, you have worked with Freddie pretty extensively in the past. Let's talk about CBDCs a little bit. Do you share Freddie's rosy outlook on the fact that CBDCs in the UK are probably not going to happen? Everything's all good. I mean, he says it in his posh, very soothing voice, so I assume he's right. What do you think?
Look, he's always more optimistic than me, and even today earlier he had to remind me to just take a win. He says, look, Farage is talking about Bitcoin strategic reserve in the UK, and I'm like, yeah, but this, that, and the other, and he's just like, take the win, you know. So he is like really optimistic when it comes to things like that. But no, I don't share his optimism at all, actually, because I just think stable coins are a CBDC via the back door. And if you look at what Tether are doing and the position that Howard Lutnick has taken, Lutnick has taken, and you look at how Farage is going to speak at the Bank of England about stable coins, it's a bit of a web that I think is basically, they're just private companies. It's still programmable money, and it's just a CBDC via the back door.
Okay, so like let us unpack that, as they say, a little bit, because I go back and forth on this. Now, I'm obviously I have thought about this a lot because I think stablecoin, like I use stablecoins occasionally for like if I need to. I only use them on Liquid personally, just because, you know, I try not to touch the shitcoin rails if I can help it, and I can help it. Usually Liquid works great. So I've used USDT, I've used Tether on Liquid quite a lot actually for a couple of years. I also realized that I'm in an incredibly privileged position in that I am, I'm not right now in the United States of America. I'm in Eastern Europe right now, but was born in the United States of America. I have the world's reserve currency. Now we can debate whether or not that world's reserve currency is actually good for me as a US citizen or not. But the fact of the matter is that many people would bend over backwards and do to have access to that world's reserve currency. And that's what stablecoins have offered a massive swath of people who would otherwise have had a lot of difficulty getting access to dollars. So I'm curious because the other point of this is obviously Tether is a massive company now. I mean, I think they're like maybe the most profitable company per capita, like per head count, maybe in the history of the world. I don't know, but I mean, it's quite impressive. I also I've met a lot of those people and they're super hardcore Bitcoiners. I've literally heard them say that Tether is a number of people on the team say Tether is a shitcoin. There's only Bitcoin. Yeah, we sell a shitcoin, so we try to do whatever we can to support Bitcoin. I'd love to get your take though. Just obviously you have a not quite so rosy look. I'm not saying my outlook is rosy, more so that just, I don't know, maybe I'm naive in that I hope that companies that are still run by Bitcoiners, not that they always will be, there could be changes, but I hope that they would still stay true to the mission of advancing Bitcoin as a tool to resist the totalitarian control that fiat currency basically will ultimately lead to. But where are you at with this? Please disillusion me of my naivete.
Okay, so no, I don't share your rosy outlook on this at all. I'm sure that they are Bitcoiners, but I think that Paolo's job is literally to just go around the world and dispel FUD. I've had an email from Tether's PR department when I was outspoken about concerns that I had with Tether. Somehow they got wind of it, and then I got an email asking me to have an off-the-record chat with Paolo to dispel said FUD, which I thought was really creepy and a little bit they're a bit too on it for me. And that's kind of just his job, that he just goes around trying to convince people that he's a solid Bitcoiner and that they're doing it for Bitcoin. And the argument that stable coins are a lifeline for people, even though it's going back in to feed US debt and they're quite a large buyer of US treasuries, I think that I shouldn't have to accept that just because they're a lifeline that I have to then forget about all the awful stuff that goes on behind the scenes as well. So it's always very convenient when you can point to something that's really good to try and distract from something that's really bad. And I think that argument that it's a lifeline is exactly that. But I see that they're buying up companies.
I don't make it as an argument
all over the place. Like, for
that
example,
they are.
But it's not. So, for example, they'll talk about Bitcoin mining. Yeah, we're big Bitcoiners. We've got Bitcoin miners in Paraguay, and then you just realize that they're just literally buying up companies because they've just got loads and loads of money. And then if you look, I just the building of stable coins on Lightning too. Not convinced that that's going to happen or it's a good thing, because when you dig into it you can't really get any of the detail on it. Personally, I think they just go around saying what Bitcoiners want to hear to get them on board, and when you look at how many people have been bought and paid for by Tether, it becomes obvious why people are so accepting of them in the Bitcoin community.
On the Lightning, the stablecoins on Lightning thing, I was there in El Salvador when they when Paolo and
you mean El Salvador, the place they've practically bought? Like Tether own El Salvador. Like they own everything.
My point being, I saw a pretty what I was going to push back on was the fact that saying that stablecoins on Lightning was a thing that Bitcoiners want to hear, because I saw a lot of pushback on that, saying people with very hard line views on this, saying no, I don't like stablecoins are shitcoins. We don't need this. We don't want this on Bitcoin. We don't want this on Lightning. So I don't know if that is actually the thing Bitcoiners want to hear. They actually, I remember specifically, this is one of the times I heard Paolo say Tether is a shitcoin was when somebody came into the room and started screaming about Tether. They kicked that person out. The person was like, Tether's a shitcoin. And Paolo was like, he was about to go on stage. He's like, well, he's right. It is a shitcoin. So I don't know if they are trying to say things that Bitcoiners like. They are also obviously a company with a profit motive, right? This is undeniable. Now, I think perhaps if I am like reading and just from what I've seen of your writing and your various shows previously, is it fair to say that your larger concern is the more closely intertwined relationship between stablecoin issuers and governments? Like just because not just the act of buying, let's say, U.S. Treasuries, but working closely with the government themselves. Is that a fair assessment?
Exactly that. I think this is part of I think it's part of how they try and co-opt Bitcoin, because they know that they can't stop it. So they just have to find a way to capture it and capture people and
To clarify,
capture
part of how
businesses.
governments capture Bitcoin.
Well, I think that, yes, kind of. Yeah. So I think that Tether are doing the capturing because they're a big money making machine. And I think that they've found ways to gain influence within the government. And it's just a relationship that works well. They can see how it benefits each other.
I think that's an absolutely 1000% fair concern. What I would ask though, and I very much enjoyed this little back and forth here because it helps me to think through these things too, is just what do you think is the end state where Bitcoin becomes captured? Because I mean, obviously, economic nodes matter, right? Those that hold a lot of Bitcoin, while they cannot control the network, they can vote with their feet, so to speak. And in the in the instance of a hard fork, they would be able to move their monetary energy to the fork that is, approved, government approved or whatever else. But ultimately, like where I keep coming back to with the game theory of Bitcoin is that anyone who is going to do that, who is going to try and subvert Bitcoin, they necessarily need to create a forked coin with imperfect game theory. They need to create a forked coin that does not have Bitcoin's same properties, right? That'd be the whole point. It would be to somehow sacrifice Bitcoin in some way, to somehow make Bitcoin less than it is now. And by doing so, do they not just destroy the value of the thing that they've created because they create something inferior? This is where I come back to with this it's a bit of a trope, a cliche, whatever you want to say, that everything is good for Bitcoin, because ultimately everyone is incentivized to be a good actor if they hold Bitcoin. If you hold Bitcoin, you want Bitcoin as it is today to keep succeeding. I mean, what am I missing?
So I don't think you're talking specifically about forks, and people just won't go to that fork. And it's
more
been
so
forked before.
there's economic, like if we're talking about somebody accumulating a massive amount of Bitcoin, like many entities have, the risk that they can quote co-opt Bitcoin is by being able to, let's say, change what we view as Bitcoin by taking their economic energy, their monetary energy, and moving it to, away from one fork and towards another, right? They can say, look, this is where we're putting our capital. We're selling fork A and we're going with fork B. That's how they would be able to exert that kind of control over what does Bitcoin look like. Fork A continues the way it is. Fork B is compliance coins. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm trying to unpack here is, well, in what instance would an actor who holds a lot of Bitcoin be motivated to do that when they would just be creating an inferior Bitcoin, which would then necessarily lose value?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. But I think it's multi-layered, and it's not just necessarily about forks, but it's also about maybe censorship. So one thought could be that OFAC transactions have already been censored by Mara. That's a test that's kind of been done. The hash rate in the US is 40%. In the UK, it's like 0.1 or something crazy. Like it is so low that we can't even measure it,
insane.
I think. Yeah.
You guys curtail, this is another thing we can get into, but you curtail so much energy.
£1 billion a year.
This is insane to me. Like,
yeah.
Why are you, like Gladstein says, like, if you're not mining Bitcoin, you're wasting energy. And the UK just 100%. Seems to be like slapping itself in the face with, okay, but we
Do you know what
continue,
this is?
then
this
we can get into that.
This is a heated blanket, because I can't afford to put my heating on because it's so expensive.
Yeah. Okay, we need to come back to this, but I want you to continue with your train of thought. But yeah, we need to come back to this absurdity afterwards, please.
Okay, so if you get over 51% of the hash rate, then you could really start censoring transactions. And I know that there'll always be a block that you can eventually find. So, like you, I go in and out of concern. I think about ETFs and all of the Bitcoin that's being held centrally. Coinbase is the custodian for a lot of this stuff. I think of pensions. And it goes back to what Simon Dixon is saying. Self custody is the thing. It's the thing that makes Bitcoin special, to be able to hold and own your Bitcoin. That is it. So if all of a sudden it's all institutionalized, and that's what I mean by multi-layered, you've got hash rate that's growing in the US, censoring of transactions, which has been proven. You've got lots of groups of Bitcoin held in various different institutionalized products. All of a sudden it just feels like it's not being used as the freedom money that it was designed to be used for. It is literally just a store of value. However, I do still think, on the flip side of that there will always be Bitcoin that people can use as that lifeline. And so I go in and out, and I see the capture. I see the way that it's being co-opted. I see the way that Tether are literally buying people, companies, and countries, how they're in bed with the government, and it's all kind of intertwined. And it makes me feel very, very uncomfortable. But then I do think, Bitcoin will still do its thing. It's anti-fragile, and if it can't survive this, then it deserves to die.
I say amen to that. It is kind of it's a difficult thing to wrap one's mind around, that something could be so anti-fragile, though, right? Because we don't have anything to benchmark this against. I think that's why Bitcoin is such a difficult thing more broadly, whether it be convincing, your sister, brother, cousin, mother, father, whatever, that they should get a little bit of Bitcoin, or whether it be, trying to, I don't know, at a different level. This isn't me doing this, but other people, pitch a nation state on why they should be mining Bitcoin or having a Bitcoin strategic reserve. It's like, we just don't have anything that's truly analogous to this. Yes.
No.
Okay. Gold as a store of value. Sure. But Bitcoin it's like, it takes gold, it slaps it silly, and it throws it to the side because it's just a joke. Nothing against gold. Gold has done a wonderful job of keeping governments in check for a long time. But then it failed as money, right?
Mm-hmm.
It ultimately failed as money, and it will fail as money again and again and again, because now we're in an information age and gold is obsolete in terms of money, right? And you see just literally just today, which I thought was fascinating. I'll read this. You had Elon Musk, and this ties in with the UK's absurd energy policy. But Zero Hedge had put out a tweet. It was a quote tweet of their tweet, but I'll just read the tweet that Elon responded to. But it was, "The money is not the problem. AI is the new global arms race, and CapEx will eventually be funded by governments, US and China. If you want to know why gold, silver, Bitcoin is soaring, it's the, quote, debasement trade to fund the AI arms race, but you can't print energy." Elon responds, "True. This is why Bitcoin is based on energy. You can issue fake fiat currency, and every government in history has done so, but it's impossible to fake energy." And first of all, I just thought this was Elon has not tweeted. Let me see when the last time he tweeted about Bitcoin, somewhat recently, in like a joking way, I think. But let's see. The last time was June 1st, when he said all new XChat is rolling out with encryption, vanishing messages, the ability to send any kind of file, also audio video calling. This is built on Rust with, in parentheses, Bitcoin style encryption, whole new architecture. Seems unnecessary to say Bitcoin style encryption there. Okay. And then the last time before that was May 1st, 2022, when he responded to somebody just saying, he says Bitcoin so many times. The original post was deleted by the authors. I can't even see what it was right now. But we have this acknowledgement now, and this, people may say, Elon Musk, like, why are you talking about Elon Musk? He hates Bitcoin. He's no friend to Bitcoin, da 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 da. Okay. But he's the richest man in the world, and like, he's trying to set humanity on a course to the stars, and has, done done some very incredible things. You may not like the guy, but like you have to like respect the work he has done. You may not like the government subsidies he's got, but that's okay. Take it up with your government. You know what I mean? My point being, he's a very important person in this world. And for him to start talking about Bitcoin as it relates to fiat currency being a complete scam and Bitcoin being energy money is super important, in my opinion. And I'm assuming you saw this already. We're on similar time zones right now. I'm not on my usual American time zone, so I feel like I'm living in the future. It's amazing.
Where are you?
Right now, I'm in an undisclosed location in Eastern Europe right now. I will be at Lugano Plan B Forum here next week. So I'm very excited about that.
Say hi from me. They didn't invite me. I wonder why.
I cannot imagine why. I am excited to be back in Lugano, though. I must say, it's a beautiful and strange city full of many languages that I don't speak. But moral of the story, this is kind of a mind-blowing thing for me because you have somebody very publicly acknowledging, and that somebody happens to be the richest man in the world, and like somebody who obviously understands energy and thinks about humanity in multi generations and millenniums, talking about Bitcoin being energy money. I don't know what your personal thoughts are on Elon Musk, but just like as it relates to the conversation around Bitcoin and just energy money more broadly, I liken this back to the Buckminster Fuller's speech interview that you've probably seen from years ago, where he's talking about like by the year 2000 there will be basically an energy money. Like he's talking about this, and he's describing Bitcoin, right? He's describing physics-based money. What's your read on this, and will this actually cause any of the millions of people who have post notifications on for Elon Musk? They're going to see Elon tweet about Bitcoin. What will like 5 of them maybe decide to start stacking sats, or I don't know. That's the other thing. It feels like these things used to like move the needle. Like if Elon Musk was like, yeah, Bitcoin's energy money and fiat's a scam, it would have been like rip. Now it's like, well, yeah, obviously, okay. And back to what we were doing, like Bitcoin crashes at the same time. Crashes. I don't know. What's your read on this? What's your vibe check on this?
I don't know how I feel about Elon. I kind of go in and out with that too. Like sometimes I think that, I don't know, he's good for business, and like a lot of the things that he does with his self-drivingless cars, and everything is intertwined with his AI, like all of his business kind of linked together. It's very clever. He's super smart, and I'm still waiting. He sold a lot of his Bitcoin that was on his balance sheet with Tesla, and I'm still waiting for him to put it back on, because he said that he would put it back on when the environmental concerns had been sorted
when it was
out.
above
Well,
50%, right? Renewables for which we've been there since like a year after he tweeted that. I think like it's been a couple years.
Right. I think it's time that he kind of put it back on, and because the environmental issues, we've proven it, it isn't an issue. And it has to be, money has to be connected to energy, because if it isn't, we've seen it warps society. That's exactly what happens when money is not connected to energy, and it's provable. So he's right. The Neuralink thing, I don't really like that. That's where I start going a little bit like, oh God, what is he trying to do with that? And that's a little bit creepy. But look, I don't know how many people are going to actually think about Bitcoin differently because he says that. I think it's almost a little bit too nuanced for people to really understand, because you've got to understand what has happened since we came off the gold standard in 1971 and how that has actually changed everything. Until you understand that, you probably wouldn't get the reference.
I mean, fair. I that's the crazy thing, is that one would think that this would move the needle like a little bit in terms of Bitcoin adoption, and sometimes it does, right? For instance, I have friends that I was trying to orange pill for years that did not buy a single sat of Bitcoin until Donald Trump started talking about Bitcoin. Then they were like, oh, hey, man, by the way, I saw Trump was talking about Bitcoin, so I bought some. And I was like, that was all that it took. So sometimes it does take a person that you
maybe
look up to and admire to move the needle for you. And I hope that more, like ultimately what I care about and why I talk about Bitcoin ad nauseum is because I want as many individuals as possible to adopt Bitcoin, right? That is what I want to see. I want individuals to take this incredibly powerful thing into their own hands. And they have the opportunity to right now. They can still own a UTXO right now. That's an amazing thing. That likely will not be the case forever. So I hope that they do take that opportunity. But sometimes, even when Elon Musk talks about Bitcoin, it doesn't move the needle a dang bit, which is just honestly shocking to me. But it is heartening to see. It feels like a little bit of the fact that Elon would, again, first time since 2022, he has tweeted, and only one other time did he, and it was a joke, about Bitcoin. It seems like his focus perhaps is coming back around to this idea that, hey, you know what? If like we want to be a Kardashev type, 2 or 3 species, we might need sound money to do that. And fiat's not going to quite do the trick, which seems self-evident to me, but I don't know. Maybe it's not.
Do you think he's even
thought
he might have thought even further ahead and just wondered if maybe he could use it on Mars?
Well, I mean, I'd love to see like a Martian e-cash, just in case we have any problems with block synchronicity, just because of the time delay. I think we can probably
you're
set
right.
up some
With
relays.
a nice privacy layer. We'll get Callie over there.
Exactly. Callie's going to set up some nice e-cash mints. Maybe it'll be a Fedimint. We'll have a nice Martian e-cash federation that can handle all of the Martian e-cash. It would be a nice system. I would really love to see it. I want to, Suze, I would love for you to stay as long as you would like, by the way, and I'm so happy that you joined. We have Adam O'Brien coming up next, but I am obligated to jump to a quick commercial break before we do. When we come right back, we'll be talking about Martian e-cash, Bitcoin, and we'll be welcoming Adam O'Brien up to the stage. So please, everybody, do stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The future of capital markets runs on Bitcoin. Introducing Roxum, the first ever exchange where Bitcoiners can trade Treasury stocks entirely in BTC. Get exposure to top Bitcoin holding companies like MicroStrategy and Metaplanet, priced in Bitcoin from the start. No fiat, no middlemen. This is what financial freedom looks like. Early access now live at roxum.com/treasuries. Built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners.
So, tell us about your furry friend here. What's his name?
Oh, this? This is Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
It's not just a cat, he's family.
Quite a name, and I must say, looks quite pampered.
Oh, absolutely. Bitcoin deserves nothing but the best. He's my little prince.
But with such a valuable pet, aren't you afraid of losing him?
Losing Bitcoin? No, it never happened before, so it's not something I worry about. Excuse me for a moment. Bitcoin, stay here, right?
Bitcoin, no! Bitcoin, come on, little buddy, Bitcoin, I need you. Don't go.
In a world far away. Nah, just kidding. This story begins in this world. It all started in 1460 in Antwerp, when the first commodities exchange was created, but the real transformation came in 1602, when the Amsterdam Stock Exchange was founded. Considered the oldest in the world, it was the first to trade financial assets. Over the years, Britain expanded its colonial and maritime influence, and the British pound sterling overtook the Dutch guilder in the market. Thus, the London Stock Exchange became the financial centre of the world. The 20th century came, and the world got into some trouble. But shortly after World War II, the Bretton Woods Agreement established the dollar as the world's primary reserve currency, and the centre of the planet moved to Wall Street. Today, we're travelling at the speed of light towards a new age, an era shaped by the consolidation of Bitcoin as the currency that will define the future of the markets. We present Roxum, a new Bitcoin-denominated market that allows trading all sorts of securities, commodities, derivatives, options, and anything you can imagine. Roxum, rock-solid markets.
Security matters. Zappo Bank. The only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Welcome back, everybody. I am still here with Decentra Susie. I'm also going to welcome up to the stage here Adam O'Brien. Adam is the founder and I believe still CEO of the Bitcoin Well. Adam, welcome to the stage here. How you doing, man?
I'm good. CEO for now, which is as far as I know, still rocking the title.
Well, I was just checking because eventually as CEO you transition out to just chairman of the board. Once you get you add a few more gray hairs, you go to chairman of the board, and then you just get to still do the same job you did before, but you get to pretend like you're not quite as involved, right? I think that's
right. That's the strategy. Hopefully I get gray hair and not no hair. So yeah, definitely definitely there.
Well, you're still doing all right, I think. No need for a visit to Turkey for some fancy hair surgery just yet. So Adam, Susie and I, we were just talking about this tweet that Elon had earlier today, and we're going to talk a little bit about Bitcoin Well, Bitcoin treasuries and whatnot after Susie leaves here. But I do want to get your thoughts on this a little bit before she does. And this, I assume you saw this tweet, right, from Elon, basically talking about Bitcoin being, based on energy, as he said. This was, I think, as we reviewed with Susie, like the first time he tweeted seriously about Bitcoin, besides just like saying some sort of a joke about Bitcoin, since like 2022.
Yeah.
So obviously this was a very serious tweet by him. What was your read on this? What does this signal anything for you, or is this just? Does this say Elon is pivoting back around to paying attention to Bitcoin, or is this just another passing fancy?
Yeah, I had all these same emotions this morning. I woke up, as you do, you roll over, you open up X because that seems to be just, my addiction, ruled by my addictions. And I see this kind of mantra. And my first thought was, he wants to manipulate the market. And then my second thought, I saw some people talking about Doge underneath, and they were like, Doge is ruled by energy too. And then I saw him, memeing them back. And so, yeah, I don't really know what to make of it. I am very, very bullish though on the richest person in the world, understanding Bitcoin. And I think Elon's understood Bitcoin for a very long time. Part of me wonders is just his problems with the SEC make him a little bit quieter around that. But then he's also Elon Musk and does what Elon Musk does all the time. So yeah, had all the same emotions as you did this morning. But again, kind of summing it up, very, very bullish on the richest man in the world, knowing that Bitcoin is backed by energy. Like I heard you guys saying just before the break, the need for sound money in an economy on Mars, maybe. I think that's bullish. And I think that we've seen throughout the last election cycle, I suppose, we've seen how much influence he can have when he wants to have it. His influence turned towards government for the last year, media before that. Like, is he entering the finance game? We know that his super app dreams with X and the name change and all the 20 years ago PayPal vision and now is he turning around to shift his attention and his focus to changing and, dare I say, saving money? I don't know. It's fun to speculate about though.
Well, it's an interesting thing because I believe the last manned mission to the moon was in 1972.
Allegedly.
And so allegedly. And we don't have time for that on this show, Adam.
Sorry,
we don't
my
have
bad,
time.
my bad.
We don't have time. Okay. The last alleged mission to the moon was 1972. One has to wonder what the fuck happened in 1971. And perhaps does the fact that it seems so incredulous that we could possibly send humans to the moon stem from the fact that we just haven't been able to do things that are that truly grandiose and impressive since we got onto a fiat monetary standard. I don't know. Susie, I'd love your thoughts on this, because not necessarily on whether or not we went to the moon, because otherwise we'll go down a whole different rabbit hole here, which we can go down. Perhaps we need another show for this. We need like a lot of hours. We need more beers for this as well. But where are you at with this? I mean, and I think it's important to talk about this thing with Elon, because this actually does matter. Like what this guy says matters. He controls one of the largest social media platforms in the world. He controls, I think, some of the most pivotal companies in the world. What he says carries weight. And it seems like this sort of acknowledgement that, look, Bitcoin is energy money and energy rules everything. Like energy is the base layer, right? Like it's money, sound, if the money is sound, and energy. Any other thoughts on this before we let you go? Because I do love your perspective. And if you need to, take me back a few levels.
Well, I've actually thought about this. Why we haven't? Because I was thinking about Concorde as well. We were able. We don't even fly on Concorde anymore, and that feels like a step back. I mean, what could you get to New York in 2 hours from the UK? I mean, that's insane. I remember watching Absolutely Fabulous. It was a comedy show over here, and they just went over to New York to buy a doorknob because it was so easy, and so obviously. Well, maybe you could have done that, actually. You probably could have done that. You could have probably just popped over. But, we have gone backwards. But then I have to remind myself of all the amazing things that we've also achieved. And when you think about technology, the internet, how connected we are, just because it's not so visible and easy to see, I think we have made some really huge leaps forward. Excuse the pun. I think that's a bit of a moony kind of.
That was a good one, yeah.
I think we have, but I also see that the disconnect between money and energy has broken a lot of stuff. But then, if we can print money out of thin air, then surely we can do anything.
Oh, that's fair, Adam.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it makes me think. Back to your point about the base layer being energy, and the way that money, energy, and value should be kind of this symbiotic ecosystem. And, Jeff Booth's famous for his take on deflation. And it makes me think about product inflation. We've got this inflationary money system. We've got this problem that exists with the money getting weaker. And I wonder if that's also happening to our products. Like, to your point, I've never heard of this get to the UK or get to New York from the UK in 2 hours. That sounds incredible. That's amazing.
The Concorde. It was a plane that existed for like a short period of time and was actually put into a lot of pop culture, and like because it was such an incredible achievement. And then I don't actually know the full story of it. So it just basically. It just kind of the project like died off, but like they had the plane existed. It was the thing.
They found a couple of cracks, and I think that there were concerns about its safety just because of it. But have you? And so they just decommissioned it. But it ran for years. I remember actually. Have you ever heard a Concorde plane?
I think I've heard of them. No,
but have you heard the sound it makes?
Oh no.
Have you ever had one fly over you?
It was breaking the sound barrier, right?
Come on.
It was so loud. And I remember being at Ascot and having one fly over and just thinking, what the fuck is that? It was unbelievable. The sound was just incredible.
As a passenger jet, which was that was the wild part. It wasn't like a military jet. It was a passenger jet. But yeah, we digress. We need another rabbit hole on that one too.
And a whole other one.
Conspiracy theory.
But it's like this inflationary product environment that stems from building, just everything gets worse when you have this broken money system, and the incentives get misaligned, the quality of ingredients get obviously tarnished, and really everything is a reflection of the energy and the value that we have in the world, and including our money. And I think that money is kind of the base layer of energy. Energy is the base layer of life. And we've got this crazy disconnect now. And so that's kind of my thoughts and perspectives on how that looks.
And maybe the richest man in the world is coming around to realizing that again. Although I think he probably understood it pretty early. He's pretty autistic in the best possible way. So I think he probably got it. But yeah, we'll see. Susie, I know you got to head out. Thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate it. And everyone should check out your show as well. Do you want to let people know when that is so they can do that?
So it's 10 to 11 UK time. I don't know what the equivalent is Eastern. You'll be asleep actually. And it is called My Two Sats. And I just obviously rant about stuff like this.
Beautiful. So if you want to hear more ranting for our across the pond audience, please do check it out. Susie, thank you so much for joining. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Bye. Bye, Adam. Bye.
See you, Susie. Great to see you for a couple minutes.
Bye.
All right. So, Adam, great to have you on here. Glad you joined. You've also been somebody I had Freddie New on earlier, who's been a guest on my regular show, the Bitcoin podcast. Some may have heard of it. He's been a guest in there before. You've been a guest in there before. You've been a guest in there multiple times, actually, both individually and with your crew, Get Based. By the way, you guys are doing just some really awesome stuff, and I highly encourage anyone who wants a very dynamic and different type of Bitcoin content that reaches outside the echo chamber to check out the work that you guys do, because I think it's awesome. It's incredible to see the growth with Julian's new show that he's headlining.
Julian's new show is
the exit
popping
manual,
off.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's been crazy. We were like, give you some behind the curtain look here. We were hoping to get to 1,000 subs by the end of the year, and his next, he just passed 9 or 8 or 9. So it's like just blowing expectations, and it's been just like step after step after step. It seems to be, I think the signal I'm getting from that is that the world is super, super hungry for, you hit it earlier, Elon's very autistic in the best possible way. And I'll be super clear, Julian is very, very autistic, also in the best possible way. Shout out, Julian, if you're watching. But he's found this way to, take the data, process it through that kind of a brain, and then somehow deliver a script for normies. And I think that his ability to be funny, educational, and inspirational all in one go. And then the team behind him figuring out how to package and process it. It's just hitting on all cylinders, and it's been pretty exciting to see.
Well, it's super impressive, and people should check out Get Based TV and also Julian's new show, The Exit Manual. It's really excellent. It's great stuff to send to friends and family, too. Short form, super digestible. And I think that's so important to have. We have so much different Bitcoin content out there, and there's different types of content that scratch different itches, right?
Yeah.
And to your other point about just like people, there being a desire for this kind of thing. I mean, and this goes back to Elon as well. It's like we're at this point where, for those of us that are already down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, and maybe some folks listening to this right now, a lot of them are probably pretty far down that rabbit hole. Some may not be. Some may have stumbled across this. But I think that people generally are starting to wake up more to the fact that there is a problem, because the problem has become too hard to ignore. That you can't deny that something's off anymore, right? It's right there in your face. It's there every time you're pumping gas. It's there every time you're buying groceries. It's there every time you're paying for literally anything. It's more expensive forever. And people are still looking for the solution. The majority of people, Bitcoiners, are in the very, very, very tiny minority. And so, I mean, I'm curious where you think you've been a Bitcoiner a lot longer than I have. You've been running a Bitcoin company much longer than I've been even aware of Bitcoin. And I want to get into that company a little bit as well. But maybe just for a bit of a vibe check for where you are feeling we are at. Let's take cycles aside. Let's just say general perception, the Overton window. It feels like it's been blown open. You've got companies actively accumulating this with pure play Bitcoin treasuries, right? You've got nation states. El Salvador for years now has been vocally pro Bitcoin. The U.S. now is more pro Bitcoin. Kingdom of Bhutan has been mining Bitcoin, a lot of it in secret at first, and then later very publicly. It's Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, tweeting about Bitcoin now after a long hiatus. But it seems like the information's out there, but still most people just, I don't know if they don't care, or they still just, I don't know, the algorithm's not showing them the right thing. Where are you at with this as somebody who's a long-time Bitcoiner, been running a Bitcoin company? What are you seeing? What's your vibe on this? Because I'm having trouble understanding it, and I'm a newer Bitcoiner, so maybe that's my problem.
Well, man, you're entering into OG territory here. So I think I think I relate the lack of caring that you kind of feel back to this apathetic world that we have. And I think the fiat system, even more than the fiat system, I think that just the world as a whole does a great job of keeping human beings apathetic. If you look at at the way that we teach in schools, even going back to something that I would call I'm a Christian God believing individual who believes in creation. And so I would take the evolution route as like a lie. And if you look at starting from that lie there, it's like you are insignificant. You were created from nothing. You are just a bundle of atoms. You live in a world with 8 billion people. All of your efforts are useless. And by the way, the harder you work, the more you get taxed, and the more you get taxed, also your money and your, even if you're responsible, your savings are going to suck. It kind of just over time, it just breeds this level of apathy. And then, there's a select few that financialize it and get to make a lot of money inside that. But it's like, it's so convoluted and so impossible to understand for the layman, for the normie, that it kind of, it again just breeds this level of apathy. My finance guy will deal with that. Hopefully he does a good job so I can retire before I die. This is kind of the mentality that we have around retirement, around, working, around our savings. I think about The Big Short, where like Ryan Gosling is like explaining all this stuff and he's like, look at my quant. And like, it's like the funny, I think that movie is absolutely brilliant. Top 3 movies of all time, maybe. And he just, we've got this really complex, really broken financial system, which 99% of people can't explain or understand. And it just breeds this apathetic culture and this hopelessness, I will call it. And then enter Bitcoin, and it looks a little bit like some kind of financial asset. It feels like some kind of, I've missed the boat type of asset. It feels like, you have all these smart people who you trust calling it a bubble, calling it tulips, calling it, a scam, calling it a Ponzi, saying all these words that are bad that, again, no one really understands or can explain. And it's easier to just kind of dismiss it than to do the work. It's easier to kind of dismiss it than to investigate or look foolish, or, heaven forbid, you speak out against what your financial advisor says. And so that's kind of, I think, I want to set that stage for the culture as to like where and why. But big but, as you mentioned, like since 2013, I've been in this space. And so I've had the luxury of watching people over time react to what I do. You can imagine in 2015, when I'm on a plane flying to Toronto, let's say, to do some kind of Bitcoin thing. Oh, what do you do for a living? Oh, I work with Bitcoin. What's that, right? That was the 2013, 2014, 2015 saga. And then fast forward to 2016, 2017, like, oh, I work with Bitcoin. Oh, I think I've heard of that. But they haven't bought me. They haven't investigated it. Fast forward to 2020, it's like, oh, my cousin bought some of that. And I just bought some meme coins or something, some kind of garbage. And then fast forward to today, where everyone's got the opportunity to buy Bitcoin. Lots of people probably have bought, at least captured Bitcoin in an ETF or in some kind of custodial Bitcoin platform. So they're at least dipping their toe in the market. And now here's where the optimism in me comes out. We've got this Gen Z culture waking up. And I personally believe that Gen Z, so I'm a little bit older than Gen Z. I'm probably like in the millennial status. But this next generation coming up feels like a crucible generation for the human species. And I've got a lot of thoughts around this, and I'm happy to go either which way. But I look at Gen Z, who is getting healthier, lifting more weights, understanding, the importance of health and nutrition, and but also they, for the first time, have decentralized media, and it's still centralized. But my generation grew up with their parents, with the man on the TV, and whatever the man on the TV said, that was facts, and he's going to go. And then my generation not grows up, but towards the later part of my teens into my adult years, I get Facebook and then Twitter and then Instagram. And I'm kind of like, I don't really know how to use this thing, but this is crazy. And like, I'm not bold enough to share my thoughts yet, but it's there. And then this next generation, they're like, what's a TV? They're like, I watch movies on my 4-inch screen. I joke that like we could literally ship movies that get based in 480p and no one would care because they're all watching on a little tiny device. Like, why are we wasting our time with 4K? Like, we could literally ship in grainy old TV. It doesn't matter. They don't care about production. They don't care about fancy things. It's like they just got this interesting perspective around media to where, they already don't trust everything they see. And so they, don't get me wrong, they share a bunch of garbage things and a bunch of weird things happen, but they've got this decentralization at the core of their media. And so I'm bullish on that. And then also they are feeling the pain more than anyone. I think I heard a stat, something like in 1980, 30% of the homes were owned by people 30 or younger. Today it's 3% of the homes are owned by people 30 or younger. And it's not getting better, right? That's going to be 0.3% soon. And so these young people are feeling it. They're working 2 jobs. They're, paying for some ridiculous college degree for the next 25 years. They're making minimum wage. It's like they're kind of forced. They're kind of in this position of do or die right now. And so as a result, they don't have the luxury of being apathetic. You and I, our generation, we have the luxury of being apathetic because mom and dad are rich and they're probably going to bail us out. But mom and dad aren't rich anymore for this next generation. The millennials that are growing up, that are the normies that are kind of going through it, they're trying to figure this out too. And so I feel like we're getting out of this apathetic movement because of the situations that the world has gone through. And as a result, Gen Z feels like they're going to adopt Bitcoin in a big way. And even I've talked to Ben Perrin from BTC Sessions so much about this. When him and I got into Bitcoin, it was there was no YouTube tutorials. There was no market for YouTube influencers and podcasts and talking about the block size wars and all this stuff. There was
no BTC sessions.
There was no BTC sessions. Exactly. And it's today you've got these Bitcoin only self-custody focused podcasts, these influencers whose whole job is to educate, the next wave of Bitcoiners about the difference between Bitcoin and crypto, the difference between captured and self-custody Bitcoin. There's just more out there. And so yeah, I'm ultimately bullish on that for the future. Julian's show, what Isabella is doing with BTC Isla, there's just so much good content, so much high signal pointed at a generation that is already used to decentralized media. I'm bullish on that. But I think, that's my vibe. The reason we're here is generally because of just apathy, man. And it's just such a sad, demonic thing that the money system is so captured and so brutal and so evil. So yeah, there's I don't know what kind of word vomit that was for you, but there it is.
I loved it. Adam, I loved it. This is why I always love talking to you. You put things beautifully. And I think that apathy that you hit on is so crucial. It's that, I think for a lot of Bitcoiners and Bitcoiners that I know, yourself, both of us included, most Bitcoiners you talk to are some of the most optimistic people you will meet. Truly optimistic, excited about the future, excited about what comes next. Not because we think everything's all sunshine and daisies. Quite the opposite. We actually know how screwed up everything is because we've gone down a bunch of different tangential rabbit holes, from the money is broken, Bitcoin is the solution, into all of these other areas, right? And so we see how screwed up everything is. We know it. But the thing is, the reason we're not nihilistic, the reason we're not apathetic is because Bitcoin exists.
Yeah.
Because the solution exists to this. And there are obviously a lot of other reasons to be not nihilistic, whether that be family or faith or whatever else. But Bitcoin is a very big one from a macro perspective, right? In terms of the whole, bringing everyone together, something that we can all get behind. And I think that it's such a crucial point. And I'm curious, from the kind of almost the fourth turning type mentality, do you view kind of the bridge between millennials, but more so into Gen Z as kind of this next, that's the next hero generation? Every generation gets a bad rap from their parents' generation, right? This is a tale as old as time. Every young generation, their parents say, well, they're lazy, they don't do anything, they don't
they talk stupid.
Every single one. And from the parents' perspective, it's true to an extent, right? Except maybe the boomers. I don't think the boomers realize how good they had it. Many Bitcoin boomers do, and they're some of the most amazing people you'll ever meet. But a lot of boomers just think that, wow, I guess
I worked hard and got rich. That's how it should be.
I just bought my house for 2 raspberries and it's worth $5 million now. Why don't you just do the same, Sonny Jim? Okay. But like, I think you're basically saying, like, if I made it, like, this is the next kind of hero generation. This is the next generation that, while they may have humble beginnings, they're born we're born into kind of the shit. Like, they're also digital natives. You and I are not digital natives.
Yeah.
We're kind of on the borderline where we remember dial-up. We
had to learn
DSL.
how to type.
Yeah, we had to learn how to type. We remember having to wait for things to buffer. Like, whoa, like, we remember not having Wi-Fi, like we, like things that they just don't even know. And then I think about, like, our children's generation, which is growing up, they're going to be AI natives.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different paradigm. But, like, I mean, I'm optimistic about the younger generations. I still consider us to be a younger generation also. I'm optimistic about us. I'm optimistic about all the millennials now. I'm even optimistic about Gen X. Hell, I'm optimistic about the Bitcoin boomers.
Come on.
I know. I'm optimistic generally, though. Maybe that's my problem. I'm a little bit too optimistic. I'm looking forward to the future too much while also absolutely loving every moment of the present. But okay, before I talk too much about my own unbridled optimism, we've established maybe this Gen Z is kind of this hero. Well, first of all, fair to say, is that where you're coming from? They're the next hero generation?
100%. I think that Gen Z has the biggest opportunity to make the biggest splash probably since, our grandparents fought in the wars. I think that we are going to see the separation of money and state. I'm hopeful that you and I can lead the next generation to carry the torch, and they will ultimately be the ones, here's the prophecy. They will be the ones that finish the job. And we have to lay the bricks. We have to lay the foundation. We have to lead them and teach them properly. And if we do a good job at that, they will carry the torch and finally separate money and state to give our kids and our grandkids a prosperous opportunity. And I do feel like the hero generation is a big, it's like Uncle Ben, like great power, great responsibility, right? They've got this big weight on their shoulders. And I don't know, for some reason, I'm pretty happy-go-lucky, generally optimistic as well. But it just feels like they understand that. They're drinking less, they're working out. Like, I mean, all the things I just said, they're committed, they're wanting to work more. And I'm just so bullish on that hero and that hero's journey. Kind of like they're going to do it. And I'm here for it, and I'm pumped for it.
I love it. And, as you say this, I'm here with a beer, but it's okay because I'm not the hero generation. You know what I mean?
That's right. You're cooked already.
Yeah, I'm cooked already. I've seen too much at this point. And I'm from Wisconsin, so I cannot help it. It's like, it's
the water's not safe there. It's just,
you've got to be very careful. You got to be very careful. Okay, Adam, I want to get into, we're going to cut to a quick commercial break, just a couple of minutes. And then I want to get into a little bit more. We're going to come back to this topic because I think this topic is really fascinating, but I do want to get into what you're doing at the Bitcoin Well. I want to get into your take on the Bitcoin Treasury scene as well. Something we touched on with Freddie New a little bit earlier in this, just kind of the state of things right now, because there's a lot going on. And we were talking a lot about companies that are, quote, pure play Bitcoin Treasury companies versus companies that are Bitcoin companies and have Bitcoin treasuries. And you're running one of the latter. And I'd like to talk about that a little bit and why you think that's important, why I think that's important too, because I love to hear myself talk. But in the meantime, we're going to go to a quick commercial break. Don't touch that dial. We will be right back.
The future of capital markets runs on Bitcoin. Introducing Roxum, the first ever exchange where Bitcoiners can trade treasury stocks entirely in BTC. Get exposure to top Bitcoin holding companies like MicroStrategy and Metaplanet, priced in Bitcoin from the start. No fiat, no middlemen. This is what financial freedom looks like. Early access now live at roxum.com/treasuries. Built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners.
So, tell us about your furry friend here. What's his name?
Oh, this? This is Bitcoin.
Bitcoin?
It's not just a cat, he's family.
Quite a name, and I must say, looks quite pampered.
Oh, absolutely. Bitcoin deserves nothing but the best. He's my little prince.
But with such a valuable pet, aren't you afraid of losing him?
Losing Bitcoin? No, it never happened before, so it's not something I worry about. Excuse me for a moment. Bitcoin, stay here, right?
Bitcoin, no! Bitcoin, come on, little buddy. Bitcoin, I need you. Don't go.
In a world far away. Nah, just kidding. This story begins in this world. It all started in 1460 in Antwerp, when the first commodities exchange was created, but the real transformation came in 1602, when the Amsterdam Stock Exchange was founded. Considered the oldest in the world, it was the first to trade financial assets. Over the years, Britain expanded its colonial and maritime influence, and the British pound sterling overtook the Dutch guilder in the market. Thus, the London Stock Exchange became the financial centre of the world. The 20th century came, and the world got into some trouble. But shortly after World War II, the Bretton Woods Agreement established the dollar as the world's primary reserve currency, and the centre of the planet moved to Wall Street. Today, we're travelling at the speed of light towards a new age, an era shaped by the consolidation of Bitcoin as the currency that will define the future of the markets. We present Roxum, a new Bitcoin-denominated market that allows trading all sorts of securities, commodities, derivatives, options, and anything you can imagine. Roxum, rock-solid markets.
Security matters. Zappo Bank. The only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
All right, welcome back. We are here on the Breaking Bit. I am Walker America. I'm here with Adam O'Brien. We are talking about fake moon landings, what the fuck happened in 1971, energy, Elon Musk, whether or not Gen Z is the hero generation. We've already covered a lot, Adam, but one of the things we haven't gotten a chance to cover yet is actually, we've touched on it, but what you do. And you are the founder and CEO of the Bitcoin Well. It's been a company since 2013. Right? I mean, you like got into Bitcoin and started a company like right away. Can you first of all just like tell us like what you guys do and maybe just a little bit of that origin story, because you've been around for a while now.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we started in 2013, kind of just like peer to peer. Just kind of, I was trying to buy Bitcoin myself, couldn't really figure out how to do it. Decided like, oh, I'll just start doing this myself, and then.
You can just do things.
You can just do things, man. You can just do things. I put an ad on Kijiji, which is like kind of like Craigslist in Edmonton, and
Canadian Craigslist.
Canadian Craigslist.
That's why it sounds
so it's
so
like
funny.
it's like worse and more expensive somehow, which is the Canadian way. And then I bought, and then the first Bitcoin ATM launched in 2013. And I was like, wow, this is way better than me driving all over the city trying to meet people and explain to them Bitcoin. So I bought a Bitcoin ATM and launched the first one in Alberta, and then the first one in Saskatchewan, and kind of just kept building that up. And at that time, our mission was Bitcoin accessibility. We wanted to make Bitcoin accessible and understood. And so I was a solopreneur. I was super young, kind of just figuring out how Bitcoin worked and how the market was responding. And I had no business experience, as you can imagine, no one to really help me along the way. There was no good podcasts, no good Bitcoin business mentors. So I just kind of fumbled my way through it. And then, so built that up. It was great. We made a couple acquisitions, expanded. We were one of the largest Bitcoin ATM companies in Canada. All that stuff was amazing. But in 2019, 2020, obviously things started getting weird. And I started understanding that, I'm federally debanked. A big part of my story is losing all of my bank accounts across the country. And it became very, very clear to me that the value that I create with my time was always going to be exposed to the regime, to the government, to the way that the people in charge, the rules that the people in charge put in at that time. And I started getting very paranoid about what those rules might look like. Throughout that time, as you can imagine, the worldwide cold was going on, and they were forcing you to take all kinds of medicines and all the nonsense that went along with that. And it kind of like politicized me, and it activated me. What's the meme? It's like, what's that meme called? Like, what made you unhinged or something like this? This is kind of my origin.
What radicalized you?
What radicalized you? And this is what radicalized me. And so at that time, we were also going public. We had to rebrand as part of that from Bitcoin Solutions, and we gravitated towards Bitcoin Well to enable independence. And so our mission from 2021 onwards, when that rebrand was complete, was to enable independence. And we enable independence by combining the convenience of modern banking with the benefits of Bitcoin. And it's my mission and my vision that, like, my kids should be able to keep Bitcoin in self-custody and should be able to interact with the financial world. You should be able to be unbanked and thriving. Maybe that's a slogan we should have: be unbanked and thriving. and like it really offends me that you need to ask permission to put money into a bank, to take money out of a bank, to spend it. And I've got stories for days, but the one that really irks me is I was buying a car for my wife, and we go to the dealership and make the deal. And I'm like, yo, I want to pay in cash. They're like, no problem. And I'm like, okay, we agree on a price. I'm like, I'm going to come by on this day with cash. And they're like, yep, all good. I'm like, okay. And then I show up with like my duffel bag, and he's like, whoa, what's this? And I was like, dude, I was pretty clear, paying in cash. And he's like, well, I thought you meant a check. And I was like, what part of I'm paying in cash meant I'm paying in a check? And then he's like, well, okay, but we have to give this money to the police, and they have to release it back to us in order for it to be a legitimate transaction. And I was like, no, like, what do you mean you got to give it to the police? Like this, and I'm an edge case and all that stuff, but it is so infuriating to me that you're treated, and it's getting worse in Canada. In Canada, the Liberals, they have a new bill proposed where it will be illegal to have more than $10,000 in cash. Straight up. To hold it, man. Go to jail. It is illegal to have 10K in cash. And so the writing's on the wall for me. And I know that Canada, compared to the majority of the world, is one of the good spots. You look at Mexico, you look at different like third world nations around the world, and it's even worse. And so, with freedom on my mind, Bitcoin Well felt and feels like the obvious solution to a world that is going to be crippled and riddled with tyranny. And back to what we're talking about, like, I want to give Gen Z the opportunity to be ungovernable, to have the ability to hold and control their money. Because right now you make a choice. You can hold your money or you can control it, but you can't do both. And I just want to escape from that system. And that's what we do at Bitcoin Well, is we help people, become ungovernable, and we help people hold and use their Bitcoin in self-custody.
It's actually insane because, a lot of times we talk about the fact that here in the Western world, the so-called developed world, most people, we really don't have to worry about, debanking and capital controls and all these things. But you are somebody who lives in the so-called developed world, who did very, like, you couldn't get a bank account. Like, and your longer story is fascinating. I'm privileged to have heard it before. It's insane because, like, they just would not give you a bank account and took away your bank accounts, and like you weren't doing anything illegal. Like, that's the other thing. You don't have to even be breaking any of their little petty laws. They can just strip it away because it's like, it's not your money. It's not your account. None of it's yours. Like, and it comes back to this idea that Bitcoin is the only thing that you can own.
Yeah.
You can really, really own. Even like, land, it's like, which is great to be able to have a place like a home, and land is great for its utility value, right? For spending time with your family, for raising your kids there, for having a place to call your own. It's a terrible investment relative to Bitcoin.
It's a consumable.
It's a liability, not an asset, right? But you're also essentially renting it from the government, in that if you don't pay your property taxes, and depending on your jurisdiction, they may be crippling. If you don't pay them, they will and you just keep not paying them. The eventual result of that is armed men come to your house.
Dude,
Like,
I'm living this right now. So I have a property that I haven't paid taxes on in quite a few years. And I got a letter that says if I don't, so I bought the property, spent my money on the property, refused to pay their property taxes. And I got a letter that says if I don't pay them by March of 2026, they're going to auction the house off. They can just take it and sell it. And it's like, yeah, to your point, you rent everything against the government. Even crazier in BC, so on Vancouver Island, which is kind of the furthest western point of Canada, there was just a few months ago where there was parts of the land that was just taken from the current owners and given back to the indigenous people on the island. It's just straight up, the government was just like, yeah, you bought this, but you don't own it anymore. It's owned now by the indigenous people. Like, the Canadian government is actively stealing property. You own nothing in Canada. It is brutal.
But you can own Bitcoin, right?
You can own Bitcoin.
This is the incredible thing. Like, they can't take it away with violence. Like, they may still try and be violent toward you. Like, sure. That's not going to stop because they're the government.
Who they are.
But they cannot take it from you with violence. Like, and I don't know. I think it's amazing to hear the stories of you and these early Bitcoin founders who you didn't just get into this. Like, I mean, of course you're a capitalist also. So like, you want to make money, obviously. Yeah. Like, and that's a good thing. It's a really good thing.
It aligns incentives. It perfectly aligns all the incentives. Yeah.
It's good to want to make money.
Yeah.
People operating of their own free will to make subjective value judgments and decide what products and services they want to offer. A free market, relatively free in our case, because they control the money, but it's a different story. A relatively free market, like, that is a good thing. But like, I love hearing these stories because these usually, it was what I found with early Bitcoin founders is that you were creating a product to scratch your own itch, to solve a problem that you yourself had, and presume that, well, if I have this problem, probably other people do too. And I think that's a really great way to make a product, especially when your problem is one that increasing numbers of people have every single year as the adoption of the underlying asset that the product is related to grows. Like, so, you're in a good business with Bitcoin. I think it might have caught on a little bit.
It's probably catching on. We talk about this all the time. We talk about we are not doing ourselves any favors being non-custodial, meaning we deliver every single sat directly to our customers. So we have a massive education barrier at Bitcoin Well, where you have to you have to know what a wallet is and have set one up before you can even use Bitcoin Well. Which is the benefit.
Wait, you guys don't, and excuse my ignorance, you guys don't ever take custody?
Zero. No. Like, if Bitcoin Well turned off right now, there would be zero customer Bitcoins lost. And I see these big exchanges, especially in the US, like, I feel like I'm in The Big Short. I'm like, why are they confessing about all the Bitcoin they're like capturing from their customers? And then it's like, they're bragging, It's like, what are you doing? Putting a giant target on your back and like creating massive honeypots and all this stuff. But yeah, we never ever custody, which again is not doing ourselves any favors. We like the Bitcoin portal, which is our app. We don't have an app, but because apps are captured. But the website bitcoinwell.com, you can't buy anything other than Bitcoin on that. You can pay your bills in Bitcoin, you can buy Bitcoin, but it's Bitcoin only. And so we're doing ourselves not many favors by preventing what would be a large market and kind of like niching it down completely. However, we are, I think, marketing towards the biggest, our target market is the largest growth market in the world, and I think will be for the next 25 years. I think that a Bitcoin only individual who cares deeply about self-custody is going to be the largest growth segment of the market. And it is my call to every single person that already identifies and subscribes to that mantra to support the businesses that align with your personal motives. And I think there's only a handful of us in the world. Like, you know, I don't think there's half a dozen non-custodial Bitcoin only Bitcoin platforms and like worldwide. And I think that it is increasingly important to send your energy, to spend your value at those platforms so that we can be a thriving force in the future. Because right now, you know, Coinbase gets the cake. And I heard it just this weekend. I got to spend some time at Camp Nakamoto. There's like hundreds of Bitcoiners on a little island for a weekend. It was amazing. Shout out Camp Nakamoto. And a guy told me his story, and he was like, wanted to buy Bitcoin, opened up Coinbase. You know, there was so many coins. Bitcoin was expensive. Litecoin was cheap. I bought Litecoin for $400 a coin. So I
literally my exact story.
Dude,
literally my exact story with Litecoin buying the top in 2017,
just before Charlie Lee dumps on retail.
Yeah, literally right. And I don't think it's. I actually don't know what the price of Litecoin is right now, but I still don't know if it's actually recovered to where I bought it from.
No,
so literally that is my story.
I'm pretty sure like it's got to be $100, like 97.66 according to Google right now. Like it is. It's like it's dead. Like it's been dead forever. The Litecoin BTC chart is nuked. The ETH BTC chart is nuked. The XRP BTC chart is nuked. Like it makes me so upset that these newcomers go to Coinbase, you know, and if they avoid the scam coin casino, let's say they're like, no, I listen to Walker, I listen to BTC sessions, I watch BTC Isla, I watch the exit manual. I am going to buy Bitcoin only. Boom. Now it's captured. Now it's sitting in Coinbase. Now they're signing terms and conditions that state if Coinbase goes broke, you know, their Bitcoin are theirs. They have to, you know, request withdrawals off the platform. Like it infuriates me that we as Bitcoiners who know better allow for this to happen. And my mission for the next, you know, 1 to 3 years is going to be ensuring that the energy that people are spending towards Bitcoin platforms goes towards philosophically aligned platforms, because frankly, captured Bitcoin is not Bitcoin. And I think that there's a really, really big risk that we see the custodial Bitcoin companies have problems over the next couple of years.
So that's actually, that leads in well to one of the key things I want to discuss with you here today, which is the idea of Bitcoin treasury companies. Now, there are Bitcoin treasury companies that are, you know, quote, pure plays or however you'd like to call them. And then there are Bitcoin companies that have a treasury in Bitcoin because, well, they're Bitcoiners and they understand that, of course, that's what they would keep their excess cash in. They're going to keep it in Bitcoin. They're going to keep it in the best money. As they make, you know, cash flow in Bitcoin, they're keeping it in Bitcoin, right? That makes sense. Again, you run one of the latter ones. You run a Bitcoin company that obviously has Bitcoin in its balance sheet. You're also a publicly traded company in Canada, right?
And recently in the US, not for Robinhood customers, but you can buy, our ticker is BCNWF. So you can buy that stock. So I'm told. I haven't actually seen it, but apparently you can.
Okay. So this is, you're in the league of these other publicly traded Bitcoin treasury companies and thank you for that clarification. That's my point. Like you're in the same league as them. You're publicly traded, right? You have a Bitcoin treasury. Now you have a different underlying business than them. Now, what I find interesting is like, and this is one of the things I was talking to Freddie about. Freddie, he's with B Hodl or B Hodl, however you'd like to say it. I say Hodl personally.
It's Hodl.
Thank you. I mean,
it's just hold with the LD backwards. Come on.
I try to explain this to American Hodl, but that's how he identifies, and I respect his choice. But so they're like, for instance, their huge part of their thing is they're going to be running, you know, lightning nodes and lightning channels, providing liquidity, right? So they want to actually have a Bitcoin business. There are a few other. Obviously, there are a number of Bitcoin companies who have Bitcoin treasuries. There are plenty of Bitcoin startups that are not publicly traded that have Bitcoin treasuries. What is your read as somebody who has been in Bitcoin for a long time? You've seen multiple cycles come and go. Obviously, I'm of the opinion that Bitcoin treasury companies were an inevitable result of Bitcoin winning. Bitcoin is winning. Bitcoin is obviously winning. And thus, it follows that, of course, every corporation, nation state, and individual is going to want to hold as much Bitcoin as they can. That's natural. So I think treasury companies are not somehow abnormal or an aberration. That is a natural progression, part of the natural progression. But I'd love to get your opinion on these types of companies, because I think you have a good lens at which to, or through which to view them. I mean, obviously a lot of them have been routed pretty recently. We've seen other, like, if you're looking at public markets, the Bitcoin miners have done quite well recently, at least the ones that, I've been taking a look at. I should also say that I will always recommend that people just hold Bitcoin in self-custody. Obviously, that's what you would recommend too, because you can't even custody your customers' Bitcoin. So we're on the same page there. People shouldn't get Bitcoin before you play around with any stocks, and maybe just don't even play around with any stocks. But people are going to. They're going to invest in companies. This is a really long lead into me saying, where are you at with this? What's your vibe check on these treasury companies? And I mean, do you think these ones that are these quote pure plays end up actually continuing to have legs to stand on? Does that make sense?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's something I think about all the time, and something I talk about because, I mean, like, it is very. I personally believe that Bitcoin is the best asset, and frankly, the only asset that can 100% guarantee your sovereignty into the future. And so it begs the question, why would someone own Bitcoin well, or why would someone buy a stock in the first place? So I'm going to start at the very, very top of that why, and then work our way down to, is MSTR even a viable company in 5 years, or 365 days, or whatever time frame you want to say. So I think that the why you invest is, on a Bitcoin standard, investing very rarely will be profitable. Just like you said, your house is not an investment. It's a consumable, a liability that you might purchase because the anecdotal or the alternative benefits are not financial, but do exist. The family, the security, the pride. Maybe you're going to grow food there, like whatever it's going to be. You invest in a house not for financial gain, but for personal or for lifestyle gain. And I think that on a Bitcoin standard, we're going to see that same mantra play out, where you don't need to invest in a company just to save your money. You need to invest in a company to usher the world that you want to see. It's the true essence of vote with your dollars, but sats. Vote with your Bitcoin. And
the votes mean more.
The votes mean a lot more, man. And the energy that you spend, energy being value, value being money, the energy that you spend is a lot more impactful on a Bitcoin standard, because you have the option to opt out. For the first time in modern history, you don't really need to invest. You can just buy Bitcoin and that's it. If you can earn 100% of your wage in Bitcoin, spend 90% of that on the things that you need to live, you're kind of just good to go. You don't have to gamble on the stock market. You don't have to, give up your fiat to some central banker in order to make you outpace inflation. You can just buy Bitcoin. And so why would you part with your sats? And it's like the same reason that I co-founded and I'm partially, funding GetBased, is because I think there is a massive need for lifestyle content that ushers in the Bitcoin message. I'm very mission focused. We want to, at GetBased, awaken the sovereign individual. And we need media, we need content, we need videos to do that. And so it's like, okay, am I going to get a return on the couple Bitcoin that I spend, like bootstrapping and starting GetBased? Maybe, right? If we turn into $1 billion media organization, then maybe we can. Which we might.
Great content.
And like frankly, that's our mission. Like, we do want to be $1 billion media organization. We want to have 20 million subscribers. We want our creators to be like the biggest and best names in the space, 100%. But the question is not whether or not we can do that. It's whether or not we can do that before a couple of Bitcoin is worth $1 billion. And that timing exists, and that timing is real. But the reason behind that is mission focused. And so I think that every investor on a Bitcoin standard is a mission aligned investor. You are going to be funding the companies that are pursuing and bringing a future that you want to see for your kids. Because leaving a pile of Bitcoin to your kids is obviously amazing, but it's not that great if the food is garbage, the media is garbage, the schools are garbage, the water parks suck, the air travel, if you can't fly from London to New York in 2 hours, I don't want it. Like send it away. And so it's like, if you're really passionate about air travel, then you should probably responsibly invest in some air travel companies to usher forward, to support the future that you want to see. So first things first, that's why you would invest. Now, the difference between, and I actually, this is good timing. I didn't know we were talking about this, but I just released a blog post called Project Pilot. That's what we're calling our Treasury. And I'll let you guys read between the lines here. Why sail when you can fly? Okay, this is the kind of reasoning behind Project Pilot, and it's introducing this concept of a productive Bitcoin Treasury company. And so I set this framework for there are two types of Bitcoin Treasury companies. There are those that are productive and those that are not productive. And I'll pick on MSTR here. Based on what I can deduce, I'm like just some pleb that has no business reading financials. I do pretty well at it now, but let's just, their cash flow, TTM, the last 12 months, is negative $96 million. So it costs MSTR $96 million in 12 months to keep their doors open. They have issued $34 billion in stock to buy Bitcoin. So if you're looking at a company and you have, I would call that unproductive. I think it's quite unproductive to open your doors and light $100 million on fire. So if you have a choice of the company that, lights $100 million on fire, or the company that, let's say, makes $1 million, and one holds a lot of Bitcoin and the other holds a little bit of Bitcoin, you kind of gotta make a choice now. And it's like, does a lot of Bitcoin and burning money at the stake, is that a better play than less Bitcoin but productive? And I think that's the conversation that's going to be being had over the next couple of months, couple of years, whatever the time frame may be. And I'm hopeful that it will be, that Bitcoiners anyways will be interested in productive Bitcoin treasury companies, because Bitcoin, frankly, is really well positioned. We have the financial, we have a financialized cap table, meaning we're publicly traded. We have operations that are Bitcoin related. We kind of teeter around that cash flow positive mark, depending on if we're in a big marketing season or not. And we hold Bitcoin and we're building a Bitcoin treasury. So we are kind of, in my opinion, well positioned to financialize the stock, to continue our Bitcoin operations growth, and to buy Bitcoin. Are we ever going to have 600,000 Bitcoin? Hopefully. I don't know if we'll ever be able to issue $34 billion of stock in a year and buy Bitcoin. And by the time we are able to do that, it'll probably be too late to buy, hundreds of thousands of coins. But at the end of the day, the question we have to ask ourselves is, at what point, if everybody owns Bitcoin, do you really care that a company owns enough? And if there's no longer a premium to that, if buying a share of MSTR is just the same price as buying Bitcoin in self-custody, which one are you going to buy? And if no one's buying, what happens to that premium? What happens to the upside? So does it have legs to stand on? I do not think that unproductive Bitcoin treasury companies have longevity. I think that, thank goodness they came, but they've kind of served their purpose. They've introduced Bitcoin to the legacy financial markets. They've showed us how to financialize a stock and how to strategically dilute investors to their benefit. That's called like Michael Saylor's ability to create accretive gains through the immense dilution that he's done is it's insane. He's a wizard. In 2035, will this be a viable play? Honestly, man, I think by 2035, so many companies will own Bitcoin that you won't want to own the Bitcoin company that loses $100 million a year because the risk will be too great. You'll want to own the Bitcoin company that prints $100 million a year. You'll want to own the Bitcoin company that's ushering in the future that you want to see. And I think that this value-focused investing is going to shift towards mission-focused investing. And I think just holding Bitcoin is not really quote unquote the mission.
Okay, so I first of all, I really appreciate that breakdown, and I agree with a ton of what you said there. One thing that I would say is perhaps an important distinction is that I do think because of the size of the position, it is important to separate micro strategy, MSTR, formerly MicroStrategy, now macro strategy. Their position is such that they own, I mean, what seems to be an unachievable amount of Bitcoin for any other company at this point to get to. Fair to say?
100%. I think,
yeah.
What is it? Like, I think literally, if we just do the math, I mean, can 15 companies even exist like MSTR? Like, I don't think so. Like,
so this is where I get to, because I do think I agree with your fundamental thesis, which is that unproductive, quote, Bitcoin treasury companies are ultimately going to it's not going to go well in the long term. I don't think it will go well. Like, I think you will need to have a productive business, and that business should probably be, it would behoove that company to have that business be centered around Bitcoin, around actually doing things that within the Bitcoin ecosystem, whether that be mining, whether that be selling, Bitcoin, whether that be doing anything else. I think that makes sense. I think that MicroStrategy operates on a little bit of a different playing field because they have also been able to address different sorts of fixed income markets and other things like that are outside of the scope of basically most or all of these other Bitcoin treasury companies, at least the US based ones, right? They do have a lot of other investment vehicles, a lot of different types of products that they've been able to financially engineer, that offer a lot of potential. Now, that being said, like, the reason that I say to separate them is because I think lumping MicroStrategy in with these other companies, it provides too much cover for the other companies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that MicroStrategy is going to survive. I think this will be a winner take most scenario in terms of companies who are hedging their bets on, we're just going to hold a ton of Bitcoin. I asked Freddie about this earlier. I'd be curious in your thoughts as well. But I mean, I foresee, and I'm no expert on this, right? I'm just a guy talking out of his ass. But like from what I see, like, a lot of these companies that don't have a productive business model underlying them and are just relying on trading at a premium to their Bitcoin, come any sort of prolonged drawdown, if they're not structured appropriately, they will be insolvent. They will not be in a good situation, and they will probably get bought up by larger players who will then hopefully, I mean, I assume that this is what the hope is of the larger players, to be able to acquire those companies and get their Bitcoin at perhaps a slight discount. Like that's what I see happening. And so, like, from what I see, like, I agree with the fundamental thesis that you put forward. I think the MicroStrategy will probably buck that trend. Now, like, and the reason I want to separate is because I think that thesis will hold very true. Again, what do I know? Not financial advice or whatever, just monetary advice, not financial advice. Buy Bitcoin, keep it in self-custody. That's monetary advice, not financial advice. But like a lot of these other companies, boy, I think you have different kind of segments of these companies. One is the, like, we're a bit of a zombie company and we're going to buy as much Bitcoin as we possibly can, quote, or we're going to say that we're going to buy 1,000 Bitcoin. Oh, wow, this company's going to buy 1,000 Bitcoin. Did they buy the Bitcoin? Is it on their balance sheet? Do they have it? No, but they said they're going to, so it's fine. Like, there's a lot of that where it's like, hey, pump my bags one last time, bro. There's a lot of other companies that are run by hardcore Bitcoiners who are trying to strategically accumulate capital in really interesting ways, and perhaps also like have some sort of underlying Bitcoin business in there. I think what Jack Mallers is doing is very interesting. Like, he's a guy who also built a Bitcoin company, right? He's got a different perspective on these things. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. But I mean, I think we're seeing a lot of perhaps, like, the vibe I sense is a lot of angst right now from people that maybe went a bit too heavy into some of these treasury companies and are now seeing, like, okay, it's like, it used to be, what was the old adage, like Bitcoin, like Bitcoin sneezes and like shit coins, like, throw up or whatever it was. But now it's like that with the treasury companies as well, right? Like, Bitcoin takes a little, a little fake wick down for whatever reason, and the treasury companies just get obliterated. And like, you would have just been better off buying Bitcoin and creating value and, spending more time with your family instead of watching charts. And like, so like, I don't know, like I think investing in companies is good when companies are producing things that are valuable. I think accumulating Bitcoin is good, whether you are like a nation state or a corporation or an individual. All those things are good. The strategy with which, no pun intended, actually, truly no pun intended, the strategy with which you accumulate that Bitcoin is really the key point, right? And so separating strategy, like, I think that your thesis holds. Putting strategy in that mix, I think they're a bad example to use, because I think that like they're going to continue to come up with really clever ways to be able to utilize their access. I mean, they have access to really, really, really cheap capital. We're still operating in a fiat paradigm. This is a reality. These other companies don't. So I'm not naysaying this. I'm just like, devil's advocate here. Like, strategy, I think, is going to outlast basically all of these other pure play Bitcoin treasury companies. Very obviously. Maybe there's a couple others that make it. I think a lot of them are going to get snapped up. I don't know where you're at on the acquisition side of things, like if you're also of that opinion, but it seems like a lot of them probably didn't think too far ahead and are probably going to get bought for their Bitcoin. I don't know.
Yeah, man. I mean, like I don't think I don't think it'll surprise anyone to hear that we are positioning Bitcoin well to be the company that is able to like scoop up these other, treasury companies at a discount to their Bitcoin. I saw this great take that I'm owning now. People were buying these Bitcoin treasury companies as if they were meme coins with airbags, and the airbags popped this weekend. Like they, everyone dipped below one MNAV should be the baseline for your treasury company, and it's not, and it wasn't. And even the way, like even using MNAV as a metric to buy is just so inherently bad, because it reduces the value based on the business, the underlying business that the company has. One thing I want to just point out though about, like the strategy, kind of your take there. I think you're right. They have so much of a scarce asset that they will always be they're probably not going to disappear. But will the premium, will it make sense to give them a premium if a productive company also is able to financialize their stock and buy Bitcoin? Let's look at Meta, for example. Meta makes, a few $100 million a quarter. MicroStrategy loses a few $100 million a quarter. If both are buying Bitcoin, so that, if we're doing an algebra equation, those get canceled out, which one deserves the premium? And the second that premium goes on the side that strategy is not, I think it was a steep rise up, and I think it could be a slippery slope down, because if the only reason you buy a stock in the fiat world is for premium, I don't think anyone's disillusioned that strategy's software is changing the world, right? No, I don't think anyone. I don't think any retail investor that's invested in strategy knows what they do. I don't think they could point them to a product that strategy sells. They're there for the Bitcoin, and so if the reason you're in strategy is for the premium or the dividend, whatever it may be, and that premium or that dividend is no longer there because the market has caught up and because productive companies are able to financialize their stock and buy Bitcoin, then do they stop at 1.0 MNAV, right? Do they become as valuable as their Bitcoin? And maybe, I'll theorize here for a second, if it costs them $100 million to open their door, and they got to pay management salaries, and Saylor needs a couple $1 million a year to be the face, and the chairman needs a couple $1 million a year to have the liability, and the CEO needs a couple $1 million a year to put the orange tie on. Like, if all of a sudden it costs them Bitcoin to open their doors, does that premium go to 0.9 MNAV? Does it go to 0.7 MNAV? Or does it stay at 1? Maybe it stays at 1. Maybe it stays at 2. Maybe it rises for reasons that I can't theorize right now. But I just like the Bitcoin premium eventually goes away. And like we saw this in 2017, there was a Long Island iced tea company that publicly traded, that changed their name from Long Island iced tea to blockchain Long Island iced tea, and their stock went up like 400% in 48 hours or something. Yeah, look it up. I forget what the 2017 cycle. There was a lot of people putting blockchain in their name, and they crushed that cycle, crushed it. I've never heard of them since. And that said, they probably weren't buying Bitcoin. They probably weren't financializing the stock to buy Bitcoin. Saylor and Strategy are doing all the things right. But the thing that I can't wrap my head around is if you are so unproductive that it costs you money to keep the lights on, how long do investors give you a premium for that? If the rest of the market catches up and the productive companies start to buy Bitcoin. That's kind of my overarching thought process there.
I think that's a super, super fair question. What I would say to that again, because I love playing devil's advocate. Is
could you imagine if we were both on here and we were both totally,
totally, exactly, man. I totally agree with you. Could I sniff your farts, please? So what I would say to that is, I think that Saylor is a guy who understands Bitcoin. I think he obviously understands Bitcoin really well because he is probably personally responsible for helping more people grok Bitcoin through the myriad analogies that he's used on. I don't understand how he's done so many podcasts. It's truly maybe the only one on par is Lynn Alden, who's done also so many and the two of them have done such and there are many others, of course. And let's not forget the podcasters, on the other side of the microphone, pour one out for our service. Yes. We need more Bitcoin podcasters, but he obviously groks Bitcoin. I think that, there's been some things that Strategy has done in the past with regard to different sorts of business ventures. They were talking about different identity mechanisms to other things like that they're trying to do in and around Bitcoin as it relates to, kind of still their core business, which is, basically, B2B type services. I would not be surprised if it becomes very clear that hey, we can open some fat lightning channels and make a, decent return there for literally a de minimis amount of our Bitcoin stack. That starts to make a lot of sense. To be able to at least generate enough operating cash flow to still keep the business, to pay for the general business expenditures, to pay for the OpEx of the business.
But then what I'm saying is if they become productive,
then they're not what you're talking about.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Okay. So
it's
oh shit, we do agree.
If they change the course of their operations, do something that yields productivity, then and hey, again, what Saylor has done is brilliant. And the financialization of the stock to buy Bitcoin to then change the course of the business, fantastic. They were a dying software company that is now, in the S&P, or are they in the S&P 500 or
they're not yet, but they have all the markers for something they could be. Yeah.
Fantastic. So to go from a failing old Stone Age software company to S&P 500 material is fantastic. And if they can now change the course of that failing software business and become a successful or a productive software business, then I think it's off to the races. And frankly, why do you buy Bitcoin? My dad used to say this all the time. My dad was always like, I'm working so hard so that I can give you options. And I tell my kids, we are buying Bitcoin so that you have options. And Saylor is doing that on the biggest steroid in the world. He is buying Bitcoin so he can have options. And we're using Strategy here as the example. That's 100%. They have 600,000 Bitcoin. They got a lot of options. They got a lot of options.
The most options.
Most options. Almost crazy. Almost as many as Satoshi himself, which is quite an interesting phenomena to wrap your head around. But all that to say, I think that when it comes down to the earliest kind of can any average failing hotel company print stock and buy Bitcoin and be relevant forever? I think we need to see more companies buying Bitcoin that are productive. And even the Bitcoin companies that exist, listen, they are all doing awesome work. But if it costs you $30 million to keep the doors open and you're reliant on investors, frankly, does it matter how many Bitcoin you have during a downturn? This is my fourth cycle. I have watched revenues fall from the sky. I have been the hottest thing since sliced bread and then gone to being the dog crap that you're mad that's on your shoe. This is the way this industry works. And, if you are not running a productive company, I just don't know how much it matters that you own Bitcoin over the long run. Moments in time, 100%. But at the end of the day, we're gonna find out, and I'm here for it.
I love it. We got to cut to a quick commercial break. Then I got a couple more questions for you. If you still got a couple minutes after the break, let's do it. We'll cut to the break. Do not touch that dial. You don't even know what a dial is if you're Gen Z, but that's okay. We'll be right back. See you soon.
The future of capital markets runs on Bitcoin. Introducing Roxum, the first ever exchange where Bitcoiners can trade Treasury stocks entirely in BTC. Get exposure to top Bitcoin holding companies like MicroStrategy and Metaplanet, priced in Bitcoin from the start. No fiat, no middlemen. This is what financial freedom looks like. Early access now live at roxum.com/treasuries. Built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners.
So, tell us about your furry friend here. What's his name?
Oh, this? This is Bitcoin.
Bitcoin?
It's not just a cat, he's family.
Quite a name, and I must say, looks quite pampered.
Oh, absolutely. Bitcoin deserves nothing but the best. He's my little prince.
But with such a valuable pet, aren't you afraid of losing him?
Losing Bitcoin? No, it never happened before, so it's not something I worry about. Excuse me for a moment. Bitcoin, stay here, right?
Bitcoin, no! Bitcoin, come on, little buddy, Bitcoin, I need you. Don't go.
In a world far away. Nah, just kidding. This story begins in this world. It all started in 1460 in Antwerp, when the first commodities exchange was created, but the real transformation came in 1602, when the Amsterdam Stock Exchange was founded. Considered the oldest in the world, it was the first to trade financial assets. Over the years, Britain expanded its colonial and maritime influence, and the British pound sterling overtook the Dutch guilder in the market. Thus, the London Stock Exchange became the financial centre of the world. The 20th century came, and the world got into some trouble. But shortly after World War II, the Bretton Woods Agreement established the dollar as the world's primary reserve currency, and the center of the planet moved to Wall Street. Today, we're traveling at the speed of light towards a new age, an era shaped by the consolidation of Bitcoin as the currency that will define the future of the markets. We present Roxum, a new Bitcoin-denominated market that allows trading all sorts of securities, commodities, derivatives, options, and anything you can imagine. Roxum, rock-solid markets.
Security matters. Zappo Bank. The only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
All right, welcome back to the Breaking Bit. I'm Walker America. I'm here with Adam O'Brien, founder and CEO of the Bitcoin Well. Again, Adam, I appreciate you joining here. I appreciate your perspective because, as we've said a little bit earlier on, but to reiterate for folks that may be just joining now for this last little bit, I love talking to people who have founded and operate or just work at actual Bitcoin companies, companies that enable people to buy Bitcoin, take it into self-custody or to, to provide self-custody solutions, to provide any means. I love talking to anybody who's building in and on or around Bitcoin. I think it's fantastic. We need more ways for people to get access to Bitcoin. I'm curious, maybe as we kind of tone down, we've got a few minutes left here. You've seen a lot of these cycles. You've seen the ups and the downs. You've felt the euphoria of the bulls and the pain of the bears more times than most people, certainly more times than I have. Is this time different?
Oh, man. I think every time is different. And every time it just shows me that it's the same. This time does feel different because of the institutions. We've never had institutional adoption like what we have right now. I think that each time maybe gets a little bit less, or a little bit more different, a little bit more stable for a lot of different reasons. But the biggest one being adoption, being institutional alignment with the the financial markets. But then also, I think that we discount as Bitcoiners the rate of differentiation between halvings. Like going from 50 to 25 new supply is a big deal. Going from 25 to 12 and a half, big deal, but less than 25 coin delta. Boom, boom, boom. Like this next halving, what's it going to be? A 1.6 difference, a 1.55 difference in Bitcoin per block. We're seeing less and less change between halvings, which naturally breeds stability, coupled with more adoption, also should naturally breed stability. That said, when you financialize things, bubbles come. And so we've done a great job financializing companies. We saw this weekend a bunch of companies dip below MNAV. We're seeing companies trade below MNAV right now. We're seeing Bitcoin companies that previously demanded a premium for just existing, for operating, now at a loss with Bitcoin on the balance sheet. And so it's, is it different? Feels different. Feels like we've got more adoption. Feels like we have less change. Feels like we've got a more prosperous, opportunistic future. The freaking president's buying Bitcoin. Like, come on, it feels pretty different. That said, like the only thing Bitcoin has taught me is certain is the uncertainty. I'm 100% convinced of two things. One, that Jesus Christ died for my sins and will save me in the eternal life. And two, that Bitcoin will go up forever. It's just whether or not it goes up forever today. and I think that's kind of how I'd frame that.
Well, it's interesting, like to your point about, it's different, but the same, but different. It's like, the president of the United States is buying Bitcoin, but he's also shitcoining.
Yeah, also Trump coin.
And Melania coin, and maybe Barron coin next. I'm surprised. Maybe Barron is the toxic maximalist in the family, though, and he's like, I can't believe you would shitcoin mom and dad. That's what I like to hope, but I mean, it's only a matter of time. But it is crazy because it seems that from my, I still ignored Bitcoin longer than I've been in Bitcoin. So like from the first time I heard about Bitcoin was in 2014 in Silk Road days, and ignored it. And then, bought those a couple of Litecoins at the top because I couldn't afford a full Bitcoin.
Right. Unit buy.
I'd done exactly 30 seconds of research, which involved opening up Coinbase again in 2017, so ignored it. And then it wasn't until 2020. So it was over 6 years that I ignored it. And 2020 is when I started gently stacking sats, didn't have big piles of cash lying around. It would have been nice if I did. But just started, keep on doing what I'm doing and let me start saving in Bitcoin. So, but it's still been longer than I've ignored Bitcoin than I've actually been in Bitcoin. So I'm waiting for that, that me to cross that hump. But it seems that it's like a part of me is like, my God, the shit coins just won't die. Like, is that just never going to stop in your opinion? I mean, are human beings just wired to, or some human beings, not all, I would say, but are some human beings just wired to try and extract as much as they can without creating value? And the rest of us suckers are left here trying to create something valuable and get value back for it. Like, are Or it turns out you can be very, very profitable by leaving your morals at the door. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's always existed, right?
It feels at night, right?
Yeah, that's been a problem in the world since day one. I think though that it probably becomes harder. Like right now, it's so easy to scam and it's so easy to grift because the world is set up for you to fail. And when that exists, like there's a reason old people get suckered into scams because they're worried they're going to outlive their pensions. Like this is the state of the world. Holy crap, I budgeted to give me 20 years of retirement. Because of inflation and cost of living, I only have 10. This is a problem. I better figure out a way to make some quick bucks. I can't enter the workforce again because I'm old and physically incapable. I'm also I did that already. I shouldn't need to do that. What can I do? And then some hero Facebook ad pops up and you're like, oh, Facebook's the source of truth. I better give this guy a few $100,000, which is going to last me 3 years. He'll turn it into 9 years. But imagine if that old person, imagine you and I are 65 and we're enjoying our later years. And we're like, someone's like, hey, I'm going to turn your 0.02 Bitcoin into 0.03 Bitcoin. I'm like, nah, 0.02 Bitcoin is enough for 15 years. Thank you very much. And I've got a lot more than that. So the risk is not worth the reward. Life is getting cheaper for me because I adopted a Bitcoin standard. So it's going to be, now that said, those grifts are going to exist. It just won't be as profitable. It won't be as easy. It should be better on a Bitcoin standard. Not non-existent, but I'm hopeful that it'll be better.
So I hope so too. And that kind of brings me to one of my last things, which is, as we were talking about Bitcoin treasury companies, I was just thinking that so many of these treasury companies that are quote pure plays are literally, I mean, they are functions of the fiat system, right? Like they exist because the fiat system allows these types of companies to get access to capital that the individual can't, and thus demand a premium on what they're able to do. And it just makes me wonder that I mean, on a Bitcoin standard, every company is a Bitcoin company, right?
Yeah, man. And
is it just that simple?
Yeah, maybe we are oversimplifying things, but it is my thesis that every single company in the world will own Bitcoin. And what happens when one of the great seven open the floodgates to buy Bitcoin? Can they outpace Saylor? Can they outdo it? If Facebook was like, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and issue, why stop at 30 billion? Why not 100 billion? Why not 200 billion? What is Apple worth? $2 trillion? If they were like, we're going to issue 10% of our market cap to smash buy Bitcoin, what happens to the MST? I would be exiting MicroStrategy at a 50% discount to ape into Apple smash buying Bitcoin. And that's kind of my point around the whole thesis there. It's MicroStrategy is the #1 Bitcoin treasury company of all time. What about these second or third or fourth tier Bitcoin treasury companies? If you are not productive and you're trying to issue stock to buy Bitcoin, you won't last, because like you said, every company is a Bitcoin company once the separation of money and state is done. And I'm here for that. I'm bullish for that. I don't know why you would keep cash in your treasury. Do you remember as a kid, the rule of thumb was keep 6 months of expenses in case something went wrong, whatever? That's punishing now. There's no such thing as 6 months of expenses because things go up faster than 6 months at a time. That didn't used to be the case. I think back to the days of yore. In Ireland, there's these stories of the workermen going to the bar and ordering all their beer at the beginning of the night because it got more expensive as the night went off towards the end of this hyperinflationary period. This is where we are at. We are heading towards this direction. The hyper Bitcoinization time is coming, and eventually every company is just a Bitcoin company. And so back to the earliest thought that I had, you need to be investing with the companies that ideologically and philosophically align with the vision you want and the future you want for your kids and for your grandkids.
I like that message very much. And, you've got a little more experience in the dad game than I do. I'm still a relatively new entrant, but man, it is an amazing thing. And it has truly made me appreciate what time preference really means, because I thought I had this idea that it turns out was just very academic about time preference, and then you have a child, and in your case, multiple, but for me, just one for now. And it's Bitcoin baby number go up. But it's like, oh no, all of a sudden I truly understand time preference.
Yeah.
I understand what it means to think about what happens long after I'm gone from this material world. Right. And
but it's because you're not
a beautiful thing.
Like your time, like Bitcoin is a form of time travel, but dude, having children is a form, like my son, like my oldest son and I look eerily like we are the same. He looks like me, he talks like me, he thinks like me, like it's the same. And I'm like that with my dad, like the O'Brien gene is strong. And it's like, I can see myself entering the future with especially my eldest son, because of like the blood, like the generational faith, generational wealth, generational thoughts and time preference hit different when you have more children. It's a crazy thing.
And you know what? The great thing is that Bitcoin enables you to escape the nihilism that might trick you into thinking that you shouldn't have children.
Totally.
But honestly though, it's kind of crazy, but maybe when Taylor Swift has babies, that might trigger more of a baby boom than Bitcoin ever could. That just says a lot about the world that we're living in. It's a wild place, but either way, I welcome it. I welcome people having more kids and starting families, but to do that and to be able to actually make it sustainable, they need to have a money that they can actually save in. And that's why I am so grateful Bitcoin exists. And Adam, I'm so grateful that you joined here.